p.m. and I would like to call to order the Community Planning and Economic Development Committee meeting. The first item on the agenda is the chairperson's roll call. I will go ahead and do the roll call. I am Basha Adamczak, 7th Ward Council and Committee Chair. On the agenda is the chairperson's roll call. And we have Jennifer Ozinger, Nikki Posterly, Beverly Hosey, Councilwoman Lauren McNally, Councilman Jimmy Hughes, Councilman Julius Oliver, Councilman Mike Ray, Councilwoman Samantha Turner, Rick Deek, Valencia Morrow, Domain Kitchen Council President, Sharon Woodbury, and I have one more person, if you could please identify yourself. Oh, and Jeff Limbian. The next item on the agenda is old business to go over the fiscal year 2020 CBDG and home annual action plan and the funding. Just to bring everybody up to speed, the last meeting that we had, well, 2 meetings ago, we went over the recommendations that were proposed to us from CDA. Thereafter, we had a community stakeholders meeting where the applicants were at the meeting and able to talk about their plans and their application and gave council an opportunity to ask any questions. Thereafter, I requested for my colleagues to send me any recommendations that they see fit. Thereafter, I compiled all the information together and sent everyone an email with the suggested changes as per our recommendations. This is not anything set in stone. This is obviously open to discussion, but I would like to start off with the CDA department and give Beverly an opportunity to talk about council's recommendations and kind of give an overview what changes are feasible or what things we should be more apprehensive about due to the scope of the project and funding available. Beverly? Oh, you're still.
Yeah, there I am. Okay, through the chair, and thank you. One of the first things I wanted to mention, I didn't know if you wanted to go line by line, or if you would just like me, like for that public service area in particular, just to kind of give you a basic overview of what would be the cons on some of the choices. Is it okay?
I think just going, yeah, but I think by category, what some cons are, and then if the committee has any specific questions or comments, then we'll kind of go from there.
Okay, and the first thing I wanted to mention was, like, let's take the Dare to Dream, for example, for the 7,000. Now, what I would do with that is to go back to them. If we want to go ahead and award this money to them, then we send out award letters, and that would give the agency actually the opportunity to say if they choose to accept the award or not. You know, if they think that might not be enough to accomplish any of their goals, then they would have the opportunity to say, well, let's wait until next year. Maybe they can go through some training or something, or whatever they wanted to do. But there's not a specific problem with just awarding 7,000 out of 75, but it might present a problem to them as far as, well, what can they accomplish with the 7,000 with, any type of particular goal. But they do have a choice if we go ahead and fund them to accept the award or not accept the award. Okay. But
I'm sorry, Councilman McNally had a question.
And there's no way for us to know, fully how their business operates, and so they may be asking for the $75,000 to operate their business, and if they don't get 75,000, they can't do anything, right? That's and I'm being specific to this one, but that could be just a broad statement.
That's kind of a broad statement, but in essence, it is a true statement. It could be a very true statement. So what I would look at more than the 75 versus the 7, maybe the 75 versus 35 or something like that. So if we can't reach a certain level, then maybe it might be to their disadvantage to accept the award, or to our advantage not to even try to fund it. So that would be, you know, kind of a decision we would have to make amongst ourselves.
Yeah, just to follow up, I guess, I wouldn't want to put an unnecessary burden on an organization by awarding them an amount that does nothing to benefit them, but now they have this burden of, well, I have to do something, but I can't by any means do what I plan to do.
And through the chair, also keep in mind that whether we fund 7,000 or 20,000 or 15, they still all have to meet the same reporting guidelines. So anything that they have to do to get the 7,000 is the same thing the person who gets more money has to do. So the reporting burden is still the same, and the compliance burden is still the same. So I just kind of wanted you to keep that in mind, you know, as you make a final decision on this one.
And I would like to say for the record that Councilwoman Anita Davis is here, and Beverly, to everybody comment, we wanted to be equitable, and we, in essence, gave tried to fund everyone, but as you mentioned, there might be, some disadvantages to that. And if I'm not mistaken, is there a particular cap of how much the funding request is from CBDG in comparison to what their total budget is to do their program?
We do not have to have a specific, but I think that is something maybe we do look at, but I think maybe as a CPED committee, we could sit down and establish some particulars, some reasonable guidelines on that, so that we could be fair. Again, I think that would be more equitable, to say, well, if we reduce someone's funding, are we going to reduce it by 10%, 20%? And then what is the cap? What is the lowest? What is the floor? What is the ceiling? And those different kind of things. So I think there's some things we can do with keeping all of that in mind. About there are some disadvantages to funding everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
For the record, Rufus Hudson is here, and then Councilman Oliver had his hand up, and then Councilman Davis. Councilman Oliver.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give a little bit of context. So, like the chair said, the idea was kind of be fair and equitable and try to give everybody something based on the presentations we heard. So is it fair to ask, is it possible, even if an organization didn't get quite the funding they requested or anything near the funding they requested, are they able to somehow be able to work with your department, build capacity with the funds that they did get in order to be able to obtain more funding in the next year, or to be able to leverage funds to other organizations and say, oh, well, we got this much funding from the city, so they believe in our vision at least this much. Now we use those funds to, either buy supplies or get started or fund a position to be able to help execute their goals, build the capacity, and then come back for more funding from the city or other organizations next time. That was kind of the idea of trying to give everybody something to start with.
Mm-hmm. And through the chair, that's an excellent point. And further, what I agree with is that we could do that, and then it would be up to that subrecipient to accept that award or not, because I think there's some merit in what you said, because we will work with these subrecipients. So if they feel as though there's some supplies that they could get that would help them move along, or another eligible cost, then I think it's worth it, but it would be their decision. But first we would have to make a decision, and I'm okay with the 7,000 on that level, on this level. I'm okay with the 7,000.
Thank you. Julius, did you have direct follow-up, or Councilman Davis? Councilman Davis?
Yes, through the chair. They requested 800,000 and their budget is for $1 million something. And then we're saying we're gonna give them 7,000.
They requested 75,000.
75,000. I thought they asked their budget was for 800. I'm looking at it, excuse me. Because
Oh, their total budget.
Yeah. Okay, so with the 7,000, what do they fund?
Through the
For
chair,
7,000.
Anita, through the
Yes.
chair, Anita, are you looking at Flying High or
Flying
we're
High.
on Dare to Dream?
No, we're on Dare to Dream.
I was looking at Flying High and Dare to Dream because both of them are, both figures are substantially lower than from what they asked for and what their budgets are. So I'm just curious, what are we expecting them to do with these kinds of dollars? You know, what are we funding? What are we helping them to be able to do? How many people will they be able to help with those dollar amounts? If anyone has that.
Through the chair, that is specifically why I said that is one of the cons to that, because if they said it first with 75,000, they could possibly help 350. So then I would say probably maybe like 32. You know, I think it would drop down significantly. So they would still have to do something that was CDBG eligible within that budget that they submitted. So again, if we decide to fund them and they decide to accept the award, then I would work with that organization to make sure that they submit a budget. So they have to adjust their budget. So we know that that's a typical thing you have to do when you submit a request for funding for CDBG, that you're typically not going to get what you asked for. So you're willing to, you know, we have to readjust those budgets before we get the agreements. So
To the chair, so
Yeah.
the impact though of these dollars for the low to moderate income people, we're not having very much impact from our CDBG side of it. If we're only talking about 32 people, 7 people here. So we're not, you know, by giving to every little group, it doesn't have the impact. You know, we use that's how we use our discretionary funds. You know, maybe you know, $5,000 may help on with discretionary funds, but 5,000 to someone who has a $75,000 budget or even a almost $1 million budget, that 7,000 or 10,000 may not be worth the time of day.
And I, just as a comment, Anita, and I definitely understand what you're saying, and I'm in agreement with you too. I mean, so if we as a group, but specifically the committee, would like to take some of these less dollar amounts and I don't say give back, but give back to organizations that could, you know, benefit to increase theirs. I mean, we can do that. It was just with the recommendations that were received, we're trying to give everybody something, but we can go ahead.
And through the chair, I purposely chose not to take part in that chain. Okay. If we were going to be having those kind of discussions, they should have been here.
Well, it's the
okay. That's my opinion. So yeah. That's why I'm now giving you my input now in the public forum.
Yeah, and that's why I sent the email, and I asked the same of the committee colleagues to do the same, to email it to me. So there was no discussion. Everything came to me. I made this, and then I sent it to everyone to kind of follow along at the meeting today.
That's not sufficient. Okay, my opinion, that's not sufficient. That will not be me. Thank you.
Samantha.
Thank you, through the chair. So when it comes to the funding and whether they have enough or not, I think it's not fair for us to make that decision. Beverly, if when you go back to them, they can choose to take the funding. They may be able to do, you know, be able to make some type of impact with it or apply it to, depending on the guidelines. So I don't know if it's necessary for us to say it's not enough. So we need to make sure we give them more or give them less, especially we're specifically talking about Dare to Dream and they're upstarting this. So, you know, that 7,000 may help, but we won't know until we go back to them and talk to them. And then of course, like she said, mentor them through this process so that next year, you know, everything is more compelling and we're able to give them more. So I think the discussion on that is really, we should go back to them and see what they say and what they can actually do with this 7,000, because that's more than zero. It's my opinion.
Lauren and then Mike, Councilwoman McNally.
Yeah, I had a few things. Just taking a step backwards a little bit, Beverly, is there anybody on this list? Because this is everybody who applied. So that doesn't mean that everybody who applied can actually qualify. They might not meet actual requirements the federal government has in place. So is everybody that's on this list, do they meet some capacity of the requirements, or do they need to be removed from the get-go? And that's why they weren't funded, and we shouldn't even be talking about them. We should just take them off this list.
Through the chair, there's no one on the list that doesn't meet any of the requirements. You know, that's why we mentor them, train them, technical assistance throughout the year. So we're with them throughout the entire process, from after the application, through the award process, through the getting the agreement process, through the monitoring process. So this is something that once they accept that award, then what they're telling us is that they're willing to do what they need to do to continue to be qualified for this funding. So they will, in their award letter, which I can give you all a copy if that's something you want, but not today, because we're past the point where we need to finish this part of this. But they agree to comply with all of the regulations required to accept this award. So they're committing themselves. When they accept this award, regardless of the amount, they are committing to the program. So, and then we're committing as a department to give them whatever training, technical assistance that they need. And then it is up to them to be willing to accept that training and technical assistance to move them forward. And like I said, there's a high success rate as far as agencies that we choose. I just don't want us to get in the habit of something that we did years ago in the city, just give everybody money, believing that we're being equitable, when actually we might have been hurting some organizations, because then we ended up having to just get rid of them and they could never come back. You know?
Okay, so everybody on this list meets the basic requirements for our 5-year plan and the federal government's requirements.
Basic.
Because that's our goal, right? Our goal is the city, right? We're not a board of directors that are funding startup businesses here, making decisions like that. We have a goal that's a 5-year plan for the city, and we need to use these monies to accomplish that 5-year plan by being fiscally responsible with them and not acting like there's just free dollars that we're putting out into the community, or treating them, as Anita said, more discretionary type style.
Through the chair, yes, Lauren, you are correct. You are correct in your thinking on that.
Okay, so I'm going to just make one more comment then. So then, is there space within the CPED department to create some type of, I don't want to call it a committee, but like a working committee or a group or something that could take the organizations that keep applying year after year, but maybe we haven't funded them yet, like those one we're talking about right now, and work with them. We don't fund them. We didn't fund them this year. Say we didn't fund them last year, whatever. We work with them for a year through our business development program or through one of our CPED programs that we have in place that helps them get more established, sort of more of that startup mentality, and utilizing more of our startup type programs, or maybe there's small business programs or these are nonprofits, but maybe there's other avenues that we could help guide them that still helps them get there. And then next year, they're sitting in a much better place and they have a lot more of their own funding and establishments, but we're keeping them within on our radar, you know, so they feel like we're engaging them, they're staying on our radar, even though we didn't actually give them money last year out of CDBG, but now our CPED department actually took over and helped nurture them and got them to the point that they need to be at, or, you know, helped them along. And maybe next year they actually don't even need CDBG funding, but maybe they do and they're sitting better, and and it makes more sense then to fund them at their full request amount, because, you know, we've worked with them to get them to where they need to be. So that would be like coming more from our business development side of things, I guess, and would be a
Okay.
task I think we should do.
Through the chair, that is something that we've done in the past, and when we have the capacity, that is something that very willing to do, and that would be something to keep organizations engaged so that they don't fall through the cracks, and furthermore that they don't believe that we want them, you know, that we're just casting them aside. So that's fine. And then the other point that you brought up as a valid point is about the consolidated plan. That's the process we're going through currently, and that we have to keep in mind that we need to be able to refer back to that plan throughout the 5-year period. Each time we do another one, when we do another plan next year, we need to keep in mind what it is that we say we're going to do, and that we choose organizations that are going to help us accomplish our citywide goals. So you made a valid point about the training.
Yeah, I would just say, I think we find the capacity. You said if we have, I think we find it. I think these are businesses, whether they're nonprofits or for-profit, they're businesses in the city of Youngstown, and we should be making sure they succeed through our business developments in our economic development department.
And through the chair, I think I was thinking more of CDBG training. So training them on what it takes. There's a lot of information that I think would be of value to train an organization how to have proper internal controls, a better cash flow. I think we need to help organizations within our city, especially the nonprofits, to have a better access to a cash flow, because a lot of organizations are strapped. And so that's why they really need this funding, you know, and we want to have our organizations get to the place where when the CDBG funds come along, that these can actually be gap funding as they're supposed to be, instead of funding to sustain their organization. So I'd like to get our organizations to that point where they don't have to depend on CDBG year after year, and then we can move more organizations in as we wean some of the others off of this funding, as we should be doing.
Thank you. Councilman Ray, you had your hand up, and then Councilman Oliver.
Yes, thank you. I just surprisingly wanted to say I agree with Anita's earlier comments on the amounts of funding. If they ask for a large amount and giving them that smaller amount, are we going to be able to have an impact with that? That's all. And thank you for that that summary, Beverly. I appreciate that. That's the only comments I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Oliver and Nikki.
I just wanted to say quickly, if I'm not mistaken, anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought in the last meeting, the chairwoman opened it up so all of us on council could send in some type of recommendation, not have a discussion, but send in recommendations on what they thought. I'm not sure how many recommendations she actually received, but after those recommendations came the point of today, where we were then to discuss where those funds can be moved around in a place that can actually be put permanently. So I just didn't want anybody in the public to be confused that recommendations were asked, not just from the committee, but everybody that wanted to submit their ideas of where things should go. That was requested. So I'm not sure how many the chairwoman got, but today is a discussion where we were to discuss those recommendations as a total.
Through the chair, this is Jeff Limby, the law director. I'm sorry to interrupt. May I be heard?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I guess I have a concern based on what Councilman Oliver just said, that, you know, recommendations were made, but it sounds like decisions were made. And it sounds like decisions were made without the benefit of a public hearing or public meeting. I just want to caution that it sounds like there was a circumvention of open meetings laws, but it just sounds that way. So if there wasn't, I would ask the committee to clarify that so that there's no misapprehension or how it was that there could possibly be a decision made without an actual open meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. So to clarify, 2 meetings ago, after all the applicants, you know, put in their applications, we received recommendations based from the CDA department, from city administration. Thereafter, the CPED committee either approves or rejects it, and then it would move forward to the rest of council for consideration of passage. We then had a second meeting, since there were a lot of questions and concerns from not only the committee but our other colleagues regarding where funding was recommended to be placed. So we had a second meeting with all the applicants through the CPED committee that was held publicly. All of the applicants were then had that opportunity to kind of present and talk about what they were wanting to do. And then based on the information that everybody received to be all inclusive rather than just the CPED committee making a decision, I asked for my colleagues to submit only to me, not to the committee. It solely went to me what they recommend where funding would go. So that way I can make a cohesive document of recommendations that we could use today to discuss where we would like to see the changes and where we would like to put all of the funding. So there were no decisions made. It was similar to the recommendations that we received from administration. This was recommendations received from my colleagues to present to the committee that we can now discuss, and with administration make a decision where we want to allocate the funding.
And through the chair, may I add to that also that this document is on public display. That's what we have to do also for the annual action plan. It's on a 30-day public display, July 1st through August 1st. And also we had a public meeting, I believe the date was July 5th. That was the meeting where the agencies and the general public were able to see, you know, the budget and so forth. And it's on display now. And what we're trying to accomplish before August 1st, when it comes off a public display, is to make a final decision on these numbers and on our selections so that the public will still have at least a week to look at the final choices, and they still have the opportunity to comment. And because we have to submit those comments when we submit this information to HUD, you know, any public comments, any dispute about, or anything that letters that they want to talk about any of these agencies and the funding. So that's the purpose of that public display period. It's the 30-day. And before we can have council adopt this document on August 4th, we have to have this document has to be on display until August 1st.
Thank you, Beverly. Jeff, does that kind of clarify things a little better?
Actually, no, it doesn't. And just to put a finer point on it, I'm really not trying to be difficult. I'm trying to be helpful as counsel for this committee and council as a whole. I mean, it strikes me as a little disconcerting that council members made recommendations individually. They could not have all been the same recommendations, but it sounds like there was a final number that was decided upon, and I think that process needs to be clarified, because it sounds like there was a meeting of the minds. And if there was a meeting of the minds by council members that, you know, in violation of the Sunshine Law, I think that has to be revisited and maybe redone in an open forum. Thank you.
I'll just make a quick comment, and then I know Nikki had her hand up. And I guess I'm trying to clarify that there were no decisions made. It's a guide, like a starting point where I guess where money and funding should be allotted, similarly to the recommendations that are received from administration. But I mean, I understand what you're referencing, but there was no discussion. It was just recommendations that were sent over via email. But go ahead, Nikki. I know you had your hand up. You had a comment.
Yes, I just wanted to discuss a little bit about the lesser amounts in making sure that we don't set agencies up for failure when it comes to be able to give that public impact, because that's what these HUD dollars are about, is the impact. So I want Beverly to talk a little bit about when we award these agencies and they cannot use the funds, what then happens to those funds and how we can reallocate them if or if not. Beverly, if you want to give some overview of, you know, these funding amounts that we're going to award, and if they cannot accept them, what do we do with them? Just so that everyone's clear.
Okay, so through the chair. So Nikki, I believe you're saying, let's say that we do send an award letter to one of these agencies and they say, well, I can't do anything with $7,000, so you can have it back. Correct. Then what we could do during that same period is reallocate those dollars to another agency, as long as it's another public service agency, because we're still within our annual action plan guidelines that we have not changed the category of services. So we're still going to be offering a public service to a low to moderate income qualified group of people, citizens, residents. But we really don't want those funds to just sit there, especially that we're still in the process of allocating funds.
To the chair.
Yes, Julius.
Which is the purpose of today's meeting, which is to discuss where the money should go permanently or as a final decision.
Yes.
Thank you. I don't know if then it's a pleasure committee to go on to the next category and then go through and decide where we would like to allocate the funding, so that way Beverly and CDA can move forward with the process. Is that fine, or do you guys want to talk about recommendations and how would the committee like to proceed?
If Dare to Dream is the only one that's basically being in question right now, I mean, if everybody feels like it's not going to, you know, create the impact that it should or it could from the $7,000 that was allocated, then we basically have to make the decision to either not fund it or take funds from another organization and fund them more. I mean, that's why we're here today. So I think if there's no other organization within this category that's, you know, anybody feels like we're taking money from or we're giving money to, then we can move on. But I don't know, Councilman McNally or anybody else would prefer.
Nikki, and then I'll get Councilman McNally's thoughts.
Through the chair, and that's the point I was making, Councilman Oliver. What happens if we say, here's the amount that you're granted, but they can't use it? I just wanted clarification on how we can reallocate it. Dare to Dream was just an example that Beverly used, but there's others, you know, Flying High, the Lifeguard Academy, Youngstown Neighborhood Ministries. If they cannot use the amount that we gave them, how can we reallocate it? That's why I wanted her to make that point in how we use those funds.
And through the chair, that is why it is best to make a final decision right now, you know, to make a decision so that we don't have to put an organization in that position to have to turn down or decide whether or not to accept dollars. And I think it kind of puts too much pressure. I think it puts the pressure on them.
So, I mean, I guess the question would be to, I mean, unless some of my other colleagues have, you know, would like to give their opinion input as well. I mean, so what would the committee like to do? I mean, do you guys want to give everyone something and let them decide whether they want to accept what is being proposed? Or do you prefer to take some of the lesser dollar amounts and allocate them to other organizations?
Through the chair, may I make another comment on that?
Sure.
There's another issue with funding. Even though they can say, well, I don't want to accept this funding, we still will have an ordinance with that particular organization listed as the recipient of those funds. So we're going to have to do, there's other work involved too, with making changes, you know, when we switch, you know, because we're going to be appropriating those dollars to a specific organization before I send out the award letters. So that's going to make another change. So it's always best to have this budget reflect our final decisions on who we want to appropriate these funds to in the end.
Lauren, you had your hand up.
I mean, my biggest concern across the board is that all of the things that are City of Youngstown related get fully funded and money doesn't get cut from them, because that would be fiscally irresponsible since we already passed our budget for this year and it included these dollar amounts. Again, it's something we could look at next year at budget time. But since we already passed this year's budget, we would really be doing ourselves an injustice to not fully fund those entities on here. So I want to make sure that those remain the same, exactly what the department gave us from the original document. And then I believe there was a little bit of a mishap with the Mineral Springs YNDC project. So as long as that is captured and fixed appropriately, that is my second concern there. And otherwise, yeah, I would like to see, I would feel more comfortable if we did not allot some of these smaller dollar amounts to organizations that are going to struggle to use it this year, and then develop some type of program out of our business development program that could help them get to where they need to be for next year, and then focus on that. So maybe then we know they're on our radar. We know that next year we can allocate a big chunk of money to them and it'll really have the impact that it needs to have because they've grown to a certain point. And I don't want to put them in a position this year that they really struggle with to meet because we only gave them a couple $1,000. So I'd like to, I guess I would prefer to remove those monies, or we remove those monies pull them together and give them to
One.
organization that it could have a big impact on that is newer this year. And I would leave that up to the department to decide on based off their applications and the likelihood of success or their relationship with how they've worked with that organization to this point.
Okay, I agree with that. I think that's a good idea. So it appears as though we would, because I'm trying to see what who had a substantial amount that they were asking for versus what was recommended.
The chair,
Yes, Julius.
I think Samantha and Anita both.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Councilwoman Turner and then Councilman Davis.
I just want to give my opinion just about, the recommendations and more specifically about the city departments. I understand that things are allocated in the budget, but I have not got clarity, and if Cal's on, he can give us that on how we allocate funds that we don't know exactly that we're going to get for city funding, and then where there is no programs. So, and let's just go with the community policing. There is no program. We haven't made a way to fund that in the city, and we're hoping to have these external funds to fund this program. So just in my opinion, if we're going to hold the whole community that is applying for funding to a standard, that you have to have a program and that you are meeting HUD standards, whether you're serving low to moderate income, the whole gamut, we need to be collecting that data from our city departments, and they need to have a program that is submitted. And right now, none of the programs in the city that has applied for funding or not, because most of them have not, has a program laid out. For instance, in public facilities, no one asked for $210,000, but they were setting it aside for a what if project, which can come out of next year if there is a program laid out and some policies and procedures behind it. But that is why my recommendation is to cut some of that funding down, because we don't have anything in place and we have no measurable things in place. And if you don't have measurable data, because we're asking that of all of our applicants, of all of our recipients, of the community at large, we're asking them to track that data. What is the impact? The city government should be held to that same standard. So that's just my opinion on it. And the crowd, go ahead.
Thank you, Councilwoman Turner. And I think at least I just want to comment on a portion of it from what I guess from what you're saying from my understanding is that it's allocated and they're looking forward to receiving it, assuming we're going to pass the budget. But what if we don't approve and pass the CBDG budget as presented? Then it's kind of like that they can't proceed with the program because the funding is not there, is kind of what I'm understanding, correct? Okay. And I earlier today I sent, because I know there was questions from a previous meeting regarding community policing, and I forwarded the documents that I received from our police department that had their application and their programming, their like scope of service and the programs that they have in place. Councilman Ray, I think you had your hand up. Was it indirect to this? Or and I'm sorry, Councilman Davis had her hand up first and then Councilman, I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. I'm gonna have a little problem because of what, like I said, how I perceive how these things took place, that I perceive them as being in violation. And I'm hearing Attorney Limbian saying that he believes there might be a violation. I'm not sure. But then if it is indeed a violation, then why in the world would we act upon something that was based upon a violation? That's my one thing. The other thing is I'm in concurrence with Lauren, Councilwoman McNally, that we should, because the funding that we have for, I believe the $200,000 for the community policing and the other money that we have for the other city services, we did, her words reminded me that we did budget, we voted the budget that included that. And I apologize. We voted we voted and approved the budget with those fundings in there, and we have to go along and we have to deal with it now through our CDBG funds. If we've already allocated that, approved it within our annual budget. So far as the facilities, we know that we have things that need to be taken care of. I mean, we know that we know it from last year's budget. Okay, this is, you know, roof things that we have not taken care of and things like that. That's where those funds would go to. But you know, so I'm just saying, I'm prepared if we get this thing to act upon anything that was done legally. Anything else, no.
Just a comment then, Councilman Ray. I guess I'm still not understanding and confused. There's no decisions being made. As the chair, I provided a document for my colleagues and for administration to use as a guide to be able to have a discussion today at this meeting in this public forum. Councilman Ray.
Yeah, no, I think there may be some confusion that there was an appearance that decisions were made. That's what I'm picking up. You're saying you collected recommendations, but that's what it sounds like. But I was going back to what Lauren and Anita said about we budgeted for those. And Beverly, I would ask you for a clarification. The city doesn't willy-nilly just take this money. There are still compliance requirements for these dollars. The city has to comply and show compliance just like any other recipient would. And how we're spending these dollars has to meet it in the same fashion that other folks would. So the city is meeting compliance criteria for the dollars we've allocated through our budget process and then through this process, correct?
Through the chair, Mike, you're correct, because when we get monitored, they monitor all of our activities, and those activities are in our information and disbursement system to HUD also. So they're not a separate, you know, when we're talking about our HUD compliance, they're not separate.
So in direct follow-up, I mean, we may not see an exact written plan as we require a fledgling nonprofit. However, our street paving program that's been existing for several years, that gets the bulk of its funding through CDA, is an established program, and it meets the criteria, thus being an allowable expense under this program.
Through the chair, that is true. They have to meet a national objective just as any other eligible CDBG project.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yes.
Councilwoman McNally.
Thanks. And just to go along with what Councilman Ray just said, I think it's important for us to understand that if we didn't use CDBG funding for some of these city-related programs, we wouldn't have the programs. So it's not a matter of bringing them under a different funding umbrella. It's a matter of us stopping them completely. We no longer have the programs. The only reason they were developed or able to be developed was because of the CDBG funding.
Thank you. Councilwoman Davis.
I believe, I don't know offhand the dollar amount, but 75% of our street paving is done through CDBG, our residential street paving. If this thing doesn't get passed, my side streets don't get paved. Okay, the community police officers, I think we do need to deal with the community police officers and their budget and things like, and the police budget in general. But how do I put this? Today is not the time. We need to be working on this, on the reallocation of funds for the rest of our year and be ready for it for next year. And it's not defunding, it's reallocating the funds that we give to our safety forces, whether it be the police or the fire department. Okay, that's not defunding, that's reallocating the funds, because maybe some of those funds could be better used clearing up sidewalks, putting in street lighting and things like that. But we can't do that. We can't have that discussion right here, right now. We need to act upon what we have to act upon, because unfortunately we do have a deadline to meet, don't we, Beverly?
Through the chair, yes, we do. And I have to have this information tonight, a budget that is going to be the budget that we're going to put in our annual action plan, put it on public display till August 1st, get it approved and adopted by council by August 4th. I think there's a special council meeting to approve this document.
Thank you, Beverly.
Councilman Oliver.
So what I'm waiting for is, are we gonna move money where it needs to be put, or are we, I mean, what are we doing at this point? Are we moving money around? Are we making decisions on who gets funded at what amount? Are we gonna do that at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, unless there's any other questions, I think, yes. So I guess we'll go line by line. Community police program. So we're going to keep it at the $200,000 that was recommended originally in per the request. So that stays. The litter control program, as we were discussing, the city programs needs to stay funded, so that remains. What is the recommendation for Dare to Dream? Or is the consensus to give them a little bit, or is the consensus to give a larger dollar amount to another organization? Or is there anything, or do you guys want to start anywhere in particular where we want to either fund the majority or fully fund the program? Okay, my recommendation is based on the applications and even the history of applicants and them utilizing the funding and having community impact. I feel that OCA should receive their requested amount. And I also feel that at this time, also that SMARTS receive their requested amount, and Home for Good receive their requested amount. That's, I guess, my starting point. I don't know how the committee feels about that. Or how or even how my colleagues feel about that, because thereafter, after leaves committee, it has to go before all of council.
If your recommendations, I don't know what that puts us dollar wise. I'm not doing the math on the side here. My recommendations are to make sure that we've fully funded our city departments. So you could add that up and see what that leaves us with.
Okay.
I'm a proponent of giving people a shot. I don't mind giving Dare to Dream $7,000. If we were to give, we would just have to decide if we're going to take more from somewhere else or not give them anything at all, which I know we've been discussing. But I'm not against giving them, or giving any organization a starting point, somewhere to jump off from. It's like Samantha said earlier, anything is better than nothing. I'm fine with OCA. I think Inspiring Minds is a good program and probably
To the chair.
could use some more funding.
I'm sorry, who's? Oh, go ahead, Anita.
Yes.
Okay, I'll come back to
I'm
my
sorry.
later.
Judith, I'm sorry, I cut you off. I apologize. You go ahead,
It's
Judith.
okay. Go ahead.
No, finish. You finish.
Go ahead. You'll give me a time to look it over some more.
Well, I'm like I said, I have a problem following that which is in the hot pink. At least on my phone, it's hot pink. Okay, those recommendations. And like I said, my concern is that I believe that it was done inappropriately, the way it was, this whole thing was put together, that was done in the hot pink. So, you know, I would be voting for, in support of anything that, the way it was done originally, even though I don't like it, but at least the way it was done originally, I know it was done legally.
I guess I'm just still not understanding the difference between the recommendation of the CDA department versus my recommendation that I provided everyone. There was not discussion or decisions being made. It's something for everybody to follow. So that, I guess that's where I'm still, I didn't realize that we're not permitted to give opinion or recommendation. I didn't. Yes.
To the chair, I'm not the attorney. I'm the lay person, but I'm just letting you know that I felt uncomfortable with it, and I will not act upon anything that I already felt that was in violation. So whatever the committee recommends to council, okay, is what the committee recommends. And now how Anita votes will be something else altogether. But I'm just saying, I'm not the lawyer, and you felt one way, I felt another way about how this thing was done. I'm just leaving it out there like that.
I don't understand how this is any different than any other year when we come together and decide where the monies are allocated, except for there being another column added. I don't know. We still got to decide where the money goes.
To the chair, decide how the money goes. You are the committee, and then I, as a member of the general council, will vote at the council meeting.
But today's discussion is, we're talking about these changes right now, like making changes right now.
And now I have a question. I'm not sure if this would go to, I don't know if it doesn't appear that Jeff is on the line on the call anymore. I don't know if this would go to Beverly. So what would happen if CPED comes, makes changes to the budget, it goes before council, and council body as a whole votes it down? Do we lose all of the funding that would potentially be provided to us as a city?
Through the chair. So you're saying if we don't make a decision this evening?
No, if we make a decision this evening, but then when it goes before council, because thereafter it has to go before council
Yes.
for consideration of passage, and if it gets voted down, then we just lose all of these millions of dollars.
You are correct. We lose the dollars simply because HUD has already given us an extension on this, and there is a drop dead deadline. If we don't get this document in, there's a statutory requirement that even HUD can't change. It's a federal requirement that if this document is not submitted, we do not get funding. No ifs, ands, or buts, or begging.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Davis.
To the chair, I'm only, that's just my opinion. And it's only one vote. That's not it's just one vote out of 7. And it's only one opinion out of 7, that's all.
To the chair.
Councilman Oliver.
And I just want to ask Valencia, or the clerk, for some type of clarification. I just want to know if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing right now. I think we are, but the line of questioning is I don't really see how this is different from last year's discussion.
Councilman?
Yes.
The law director is on the line, so we will allow him to give a legal opinion as it relates to any violation of this Ohio Sunshine Law. He is still on the line.
Through the chair, if I may, this is Jeff again.
Yes.
I guess I'd have to ask the question, the process by which the committee came to the numbers that they're making as recommendations. I'm concerned that if there's the appearance, at least, of impropriety, that there was discussion or some kind of meeting of the minds to conclude what amounts are being suggested for each organization. Perhaps if somebody could direct comments to the process by which they decided who should get what the factors were that they looked at, and then how they were given to the committee chair, and then how that process all unfolded so that there was one final number. That's concerning to me as your attorney.
Thank you. Yes, Jeff and I will go ahead and I will speak on that. Based on the 2 meetings that we previously had that were very lengthy because all of the colleagues were engaged in the process of where they feel money should either be recommended or where it should be allotted to. At the conclusion, at the ending of the previous meeting, after we met with our stakeholders that applied, I asked for my colleagues and I put out an email for my colleagues to email me, not to email the committee, because that way there wouldn't be a quorum, just to email me. And based on the applications that were received from CDA to us, so we were able to look through it, and based on past recommendations and how much money was allotted in the past, and based on any recommendations that were emailed solely to me, I then created a document, and I solely myself made this document with a suggestion of recommendations, which then were emailed to administration and to the rest of council at that time, not just to the committee. There was no discussion with the committee. It was sent to my colleagues as a guide, so that way we can discuss today and decide where the money is going to be allotted, in the same fashion that CDA provided us with a document of recommendations.
Through the chair, if I may, I know that was well intentioned, and I don't question anybody's motivation. I'm just concerned about the appearance of impropriety because it doesn't allow the public an opportunity to appreciate what the specific positions were of specific council members and the process by which they concluded how much each organization should get. It's still sort of clouded in the cloak of secrecy, I think, when you simply send recommendations to the committee chairperson, and then what I guess happened is then maybe you did you sort of took an average of what everybody suggested, and now it's being discussed now. I think that violates the spirit of the public records, or excuse me, open meetings law. Thank you.
Through the chair, but isn't that what today's meeting is about? The discussion to put the funds where they should go?
Through the chair, it doesn't sound like it. What it sounds like is that you have a number that you're going to go with, and then everybody's going to either vote yay or nay on it.
I don't think that's the case. I think we're
No, that doesn't happen until it goes before council. This is a committee meeting, and we need to have some type of starting point. So I, as the chair, provided these numbers to council as a whole to have for the meeting today. From my understanding, the violation of sunshine law would be having discussion and making decisions behind closed doors. There was no discussion that took place. No decisions were made. I, as the council person and as the chairwoman of CPED, made these recommendations to my colleagues in preparation for today's meeting, so that we may move forward and be able to discuss and make decisions today as a committee that would then go forward to the rest of council for consideration of passage at the next council meeting. If the committee would like to move forward with allotting the funding so that we may get it to Beverly this evening so that we can send it to the council floor. It would be a shame if we didn't get this funding from the government, and that's millions of dollars lost. Mike?
Sorry, I missed that. I just wanted to make sure that I usually disclose that, you know, I am on OCA's board and currently the president, so that I, you know, not participating in discussion pertaining to them or to the public services, just making sure that was on the record there. That's my only comment. Thanks.
Thank you.
So do we move money around now?
Yes, if we can probably proceed at this time with the meeting. I guess just a quick comment and question to Beverly. I am in agreement with Councilman McNally, and I would like to see the Mineral Springs funded. And I know previously, I believe it was in the wrong category. Does it indeed belong in public facilities? Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct. And we have to make sure that the budget is balanced. And so I believe we could, if we do not change anything else on the original budget, that would make that 20,000, unless that you had suggestions or recommendations to change anything else.
Okay. And I have a question regarding the improvements, the City of Youngstown facility improvements. How would that affect any plans that are in place if that did not receive the 210,000 that was recommended by administration? Like, what is that money specifically going to?
Through the chair, I believe that's for a fire station improvement. So I don't know if it's new construction or exactly, but it's for the fire station. And my only recommendation would be that we could, if you choose to fund more than 20,000 to the Mineral Springs project, then I would say maybe you can move 10. We don't want to take these that improvement dollar anywhere under 200,000.
Okay. Councilman McNally, did you want to, I believe their request was $40,000. Were you thinking of funding them fully?
My personal opinion is that it's a great program, but you know, we have to make sure that we're maintaining objectivity when we do the funding based off their score, their application, and their history of YNDC. It seems like it meets all the criteria, and we know that they have the necessary reporting, and it's serving a big group of people. It's also something brand new. It's a brand new concept that they're doing here with this. So that, I think, kind of fits the bill of wanting to try new things with some of this money that some of the other council people have mentioned. But again, you know, we have trying to maintain objectivity across the board. You know, I think they've proven, the application proves that it can warrant the funding.
Okay, I mean, I agree. I would actually like to see them funded fully.
I agree. I think it's a great project. You know, the city needs new and modern housing that's ready to go for citizens, and I think it's something that should be fully funded.
Okay. Beverly, I have another quick question for you. Would it be possible if there were certain organizations, for example, that the committee recommends that whether get fully funded or, you know, get a percentage funded, and then thereafter, when we're doing the math on how much money is left over, would you then want to make recommendations to where to allot the rest of the money, or did you want to go dollar by dollar to right now to do that?
Through the chair, let me make sure I'm understanding your question. So you're saying if we don't fund them the amount that we really want to fund them right now, that when we get ready to reprogram other funds, are you talking about other CDBG funds or funds within this 2020 funding?
So say, for example, and this is just hypothetical, say, for example, in housing, okay, if we say for the first one, whatever, say, for example, YNDC, we say we want to fully fund them, let's say Plaza View, although there's not enough, I don't think there would be enough, but say Plaza View, fully fund them, but then we weren't sure about the other three, and we would say, hey, what do you recommend, how to split, you know, the remainder of it, is what I'm saying? Or do you just want to right now go dollar by dollar and figure it out by, you know what I mean, line by line for each applicant?
Yeah, I'd like to have the housing budget figured out line by line, but have, you know, so it will, so in the end, the budget's going to be balanced. But have we completed the public service area?
What would the committee like to do regarding the public service?
Because we need to focus on finishing the public
Yeah.
service area.
I mean, it sounds like from the discussion today that you get that we want to find a way to fund, that you want to find a way to fund smarts.
Yes.
But other than that, there was nothing else that was like, yes, that we said today, yes, we really want to fund that isn't already being funded. And so maybe taking, so, you know, again, I'm not doing math over here on the side, so I don't know how we get to a point where you can fund smarts, but maybe Beverly is doing math on the side quickly.
Sure. Okay, so we need 20,000. Right now, the public service portion is balanced so that it's, now that's based on the original dollars that we had. Now, the pink numbers are also balanced, but I thought you were trying to go back to the original budget. So that's what, you know, I'm not clear on right at this point in time. Where are you as a committee on this budget? Both sides are balanced, 476,050. But if you want to change anything in your pink area.
Yeah, I guess I was working from from Beverly's original one.
Okay.
And that's, you know, the 20 grand is empty there.
So we will need to take 20 grand from somewhere within that category.
Right. And I know that smarts, I think smarts, they're pretty well established. So they could, they're not one of the organizations that would struggle if we didn't meet their full funding requirements. Is that a fair statement?
That is correct.
So maybe the full 20 grand isn't necessarily needed in this regard or in this example.
I just, another comment as well, because I don't believe it, unless I didn't look at the document correctly from a couple meetings ago, I don't believe that there was a recommendation, or I don't think it was listed under the public service for the YNDC Revitalize, where they do the board ups. Unless I missed it, I don't think that was part of the.
And that's another one that we would have to rearrange original numbers.
Mm-hmm.
you know, in order to put, that's another $45,000.
And I'm willing, I mean, I'm flexible. So whatever, you know, my colleagues would like to see, my recommendations and what I recommend and suggest is what's in pink. Those are my recommendations. But now the committee can make their recommendations as well. Councilman Davis?
This 40,000 that YNDC had requested, that's for the board up program?
Through the chair, no, that's a sidewalk project.
That's the sidewalk. Under the public service?
No, under the public service, that is the board up, yes.
And so it had requested 40, had been allocated none, correct? And the CPED, well, the pink, I won't say the CPED committee, but in the pink, it's listed that it's suggested that we allocate 25,000 towards the board up program, correct? That's how I'm reading it?
Yes.
Okay, and I tell you, here in the 6th Ward, we still have a ton of vacancies, and I call upon YNDC and anyone else all the time to get things boarded up. So I would like to see us indeed fund that. And we get from YNDC, we get a good return on our dollar.
I actually agree. The reason I did not recommend to fully fund them based on this was because I was trying to be equitable and give everybody a little something, but I actually think that maybe some of the organizations that were then going to receive a lesser dollar amount, we can go ahead and add to other programs such as the Revitalize. And then as Councilwoman McNally stated, maybe, you know, prep some of these other organizations for funding next year, or even give the referral over to our economic development department to see if we can help them. Go ahead, Anita.
Direct follow-up. And it's something that it's something that's not in the downtown area, YNDC. And almost all these things here, as I glance at these things, so many of these things are all in the downtown Oak Hill. And it, you know, the only thing that the rest of the city is getting is the resource of the board ups from YNDC. Thank you.
Councilwoman McNally.
Yeah, I would agree with that wholeheartedly with Anita's comment. The city can't survive without a board up program. That's a must-have for the city of Youngstown right now, still, unfortunately. So to not fund it is, how that even was a recommendation is beyond me. We need to find some money there to fund that program. Make that one a priority.
I agree. Nikki?
I believe this one not being funded in the original budget was an error on our end. Is that correct,
Okay.
Beverly?
That is true.
Oh, okay. To the chair then?
Yes, Anita.
What were you proposing for the board up program, Beverly?
I can propose the 40,000, you know, for that, but what we would have to do then is we have to adjust this budget because we can only go up as high as this 476,050 because we can only 13%. We're at 13% of the annual allocation, and we are not permitted to go over 50. So we keep it at around 13 to assure that we don't go over 15% in the public service category. So I need to know now, are we working from this new budget recommendations or the old so that I can adjust? I'm adjusting this spreadsheet as we go.
I think we got to work from the old, but if there was no previous allocation for them because it, you know, because it was made in error, I guess, then we still got to find
Yes.
where take money from to fund them.
Yeah, so I just want to know where I'm putting my numbers. If I'm changing numbers in the original column now, so that we need to go back through all of these organizations and decide. I mean, particularly, we're talking about Dare to Dream, Flying High, Heart Reach Ministries, Inspiring Minds. We already said the OCA is going to get full funding, and so is SMARTS and the boarding. So let's go back and look at the programs that we have already stated that aren't going to be fully funded, and then decide to what level you want to fund those.
Well,
I would like, oh, go ahead, Anita.
well, if it was an error that they did not receive any funding, and that it had been proposed that you're planning on giving them the 40,000, then we would need to pluck it from one of those other ones.
That's correct. That is correct.
So, and that would be, like you said, Dare to Dream or Flying High, one of those that's getting a dollar amount that's sufficient, that if we pulled the 40,000, they would still have some funds able to operate with.
Or Heart Reach.
And Heart Reach,
yes. Yes, all three of them. That's just my suggestion. I'm not part of the committee, but that's my suggestion.
Thank you, Lauren.
Just so I'm working from the same numbers. So we're looking at 60 grand then. You want 20 grand for, yeah, I'm working from your original budget, Beverly. You want, OCA's already fully funded in your original budget. So you're just looking at 20 grand for SMARTS, 40 grand for board ups. That's 60 total that we need to pull from Dare to Dream, Flying High, Heart Reach Ministries, one of these other
Through the chair, we need to reduce $40,000 in order to get that back, get that column to where it needs to be.
60.
60, yes.
60. The
60, okay.
And I actually, as a comment, just based on the research and looking at the applications and also the public meeting we had last week with the applicants, I would like to see Ohio Urban Renaissance receive some type of funding. And then the recommendation from CDA, there was nothing allocated there. So I'm not sure where else we would take money from.
Yeah, so I didn't have SMARTS over there. So with SMARTS, it is 60.
Anita?
Vashi, which one did you say you wanted to see funded?
Ohio Urban Renaissance.
Okay, at 35,000. So now we're looking at now you're looking at 95,000.
Correct.
We'd have to pluck from someone. So who would we strip naked? Because,
and I'm not.
Okay, I'm not being funny, but who would we strip?
You'd have to take Dare to Dream and Flying High are the two highest. That's all you could do to get to 95,000, just from a pure numbers standpoint.
And Heart Reach.
70, 89. Well, if you took the top two, you took Dare to Dream and Flying High, you'd be at 97,000. So it would cover those other three programs with a little extra. So you could give that little extra back, but we're talking minimum number there, 7 grand at most.
And I think it's important just for the public to understand that this is not money that has been allocated. So we're not taking away or adding to anyone. We're making proposals based, we're now, I guess, trying to allot the money based on the recommendations that were received. So no one in essence is really getting added anything or being, you know, getting taken money being taken away because nothing has actually been formally allocated. That's why in my suggestion that I made, I was trying to give everyone a little bit of something, but like I said, I definitely would want the Revitalize to be fully funded, SMARTS to be fully funded, OCA to be fully funded, the community policing program, litter control, and I would like to see some type of funding to go to Ohio Urban Renaissance based on, like I said, their application with, and the information that they provided us and the services that they offer. I mean, I'm open to giving other people money because there's still funding left, but those are just my recommendations.
Yeah, I have to agree with that.
My question would be to Beverly here. Again, just looking at numbers, if Flying High, the request was over $800,000, is the $60,000 that you actually put in your recommendation really going to make a dent or a help or anything like that in that $800,000 request? So is that one that, you know, your recommendation actually is putting them in a position by which they maybe couldn't succeed, and so that's money that we can move?
Through the chair, I did have some ideas on that one as far as they were going to contract with a couple agencies to provide a particular service, but I'm going to turn this over and ask Nikki to speak on that one also.
Thank you, through the chair. And as we're sitting here, I'm working out some numbers myself to get a balanced budget. I do have a balance, but again, it would be based on your recommendations. With Flying High, they're one of the newer agencies that have applied for money and funding through CDBG. However, they're not new to other grants, so they can still survive. They had various activities that fit within HUD, but in order to narrow them down, for instance, they were under workforce development, they were under public services, they were under various activities based on their application. So the reason that Beverly honed them into 60 is so they can fit under one activity. HUD doesn't permit you to be under several activities for the same funding source. So they can still survive. We just have to redirect which activity they're going to be under.
Okay, that answers my question.
Anita?
The Ohio Urban Renaissance, what portion of their budget is this? They asked for 40,000 and in the pink you have 35. What is their total budget? I don't remember. And how many people?
Oh, go ahead, because I don't have it in front of me. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And how many people will be served with this here?
Beverly, do you have, by chance, have access to their...
Through the chair, I can give you the basic information on that one. Their total project budget, $74,450. Projected units of service, 65. That's 1,145 per unit. And they asked for 40,450, as you see. And according to their cover letter, they have 34,000 other committed funds, but I don't have access right now to see if those funds are already committed or if they're some projected committed
So
funds.
we would be, through the chair, so we would be providing 50% of their funding. Is that right? Right, Beverly?
Actually, I would say that's about 90.
Oh, no, I can't count. Thank goodness you don't count on me. I just don't see us, I don't understand why we would be funding an agency like that at that level. You know, 10,000, maybe 35,000. No, just my opinion.
Councilman Oliver?
I do think Ohio Urban Renaissance gave a great presentation. I think they had a good application and they're already doing great work in the community when it comes to our youth. I do kind of agree with Councilwoman Davis that we don't need to fund them at that level, but I do think—
And I'm sorry to interject, it's 54%, but go ahead.
But I do think they deserve some level of funding to be able to help them continue their work. I would be comfortable at 15,000.
Okay.
Nikki, but I'm sorry, Beverly, I have a question. If we give you dollar amounts on your, do you have a spreadsheet that's giving you a running total? So then we know where.
Yes, I'm looking at a spreadsheet, yes.
Okay, and it gives you running total to know how much money we would then have to keep going with?
Yes, because right now we're still, without me putting Ohio Urban Renaissance back over there in that original column, we are short 60,000.
So we can take 20,000 from Ohio Urban Renaissance.
No, I believe Beverly is working off of the recommendation column that was received from CDA.
Right, so we take Ohio Urban Renaissance down to 15,000, reallocate that to whether it's going to go towards smarts or whichever other programs that need to be fully funded.
No, they had Ohio Urban Renaissance at 0. So we would have to take away 15,000 from the recommendations that CDA gave.
Yes, so now we're at 75,000, right?
Yes, Nikki had her hand up.
Thank you. Through the chair, I think it would be helpful so that, you know, we, as we're doing this, we all are in agreement that the ones that, and I'm looking to the side because I have another computer up, so I apologize. But the ones that we have decided originally not to fund, not just Ohio Urban Renaissance, but the Youngstown Lifeguard Academy, Oak Hill Collaborative, if those are going to stay 0, we need to make sure that we're in agreement that those are going to stay 0 so that as we go down, we're not shifting funds again. So if those are going to stay 0, then we know where our starting point is. And I also want us to keep in mind too, as we're shifting these funds around, that we're still making sure that that impact is there.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Oh, Anita, you had your hand up.
Well, yes. I was just going to thank you, Nikki. If we kept it at the 0 amount for the Lifeguard Academy for this year and had them do a little more on their behalf to come back next year, that would be an additional 20,000 that we would not have to come up with. So now we're down at 55.
We would still have to come up with the same amount because the CDA's recommendation was already to give them 0. So if we choose to give them something, we have to take away even more money from their recommendation.
To the chair, well, I was saying, give them nothing this year and let them come back next year after they've done more preparation and maybe raise some of their own funding so that we can look at saying, we're going to try to match what they've done instead of them coming empty-handed.
Nikki, and then Lauren, do you have your hand up? But go ahead, Nikki, you had a comment, then Lauren.
Yeah, I was just through the chair, thank you. I was going to suggest if we can just start again, line by line, let's start with Dare to Dream. Okay, if 7 is not enough, where would impact be at 15? You know, as we're talking, like I said, I was able to balance it out and make it balanced, but I want to make sure the impact is going to be there if we're going to reduce these amounts and give them something. So if 7 is not enough to reach that 350 person, you know, what would 15 give them? So we still want to make sure that we're looking at those other factors so that they still fall within the HUD guidelines and we're not setting them up for failure. So, you know, looking at the application, looking at the scoring, you know, do we think 15 is feasible for them to attain some type of impact in the community? And I think we've all taken that kind of look at the application, you know, based on those criteria and those national objectives through HUD. So, you know, what would 15 get them? And moving on to the next one, we're flying high. Yes, they asked for 821, you know, the committee came up with 10, we thought 60, where would 30 get them? Would 30 get them the impact that they need? Can they still use it for the program in which they applied for? And making sure that that impact of that program and that activity is still, you know, felt and seen in the community.
I agree with that, but I guess my question would then be, I mean, are we going to make that, you know, to answer that question for the organization? And I'm sorry, I'm typing up, I'm trying to keep a running total on a spreadsheet based on what people are recommending to see what the total is.
Well, and through the chair, to that question, yes, because that's the approach that we are all taking and looking at this anyway. You know, what is the impact, and can they still serve the community with what they have applied for and what we're giving them?
Okay.
What is the impact? That's the bottom line, is what is the impact to the community? If it's not feasible to give them 15, then let's decide that we're going to shift it somewhere else, you know, for Dare to Dream. If they can use the 15, let's move down to Flying High. Can they use 30? You know, can Heart Reach go with 15? We already said the ones we're going to keep. Let's talk about the ones that we need to reallocate so that we can get this balance.
Okay.
Oh, I think Lauren had her hand.
Yeah, Lauren.
Nikki covered it for me. That's what I was going with too. Like, let's focus on the ones that, you know, we can't keep because we want to keep other ones. And again, that impact piece that perhaps Beverly and her department could help guide us along the way here. If as funding gets cut for each of those ones that we can't keep.
Anita.
Through the chair, I'd like to ask Rufus, since you're here, Rufus, if with at 60,000, if it were taken down to 30,000, would it still be able to have a significant impact?
I think the main thing we have to talk about is the units of service.
Right.
And adjust our expectations as far as the units of service that they would be able to provide. Under the original budget, like Beverly said, the budget was $116,604. They were asking for 75. We suggested 37. The committee said 7. Well, with the 116 figure, they were estimating that they could commit 350 units of service at $333.15. So I think there's a relationship between the amount of funding that they'll be able to get and the amount of units of service they would be able to produce. There's a direct effect.
So just for clarification, Rufus, $331 is their cost of doing business to affect one person. So if I
that's the figure that they provided.
So if I divide the 15,000 by 331, that'll tell me what their impact's gonna be.
That using their figure, based upon the original amount of funding, they said they would be able to produce $333.50.
So 45 people, give or take.
$33.15.
So they're looking at 45 people, give or take, versus 890 people with the 37,000 or so. We're essentially cutting them in half, a little bit more, less. Yeah.
But once again, you know, the funding that they get an internal decision would have to be made, like Beverly said, by adjusting their budget as to where they feel that would have the biggest impact.
Okay.
So that's something that would have to be worked out as well, is whatever they are funded is significantly less than what they were anticipating that the budget was going to be. And so it will be up to them to decide where they would best think that whatever you give them would be going to.
But this is one aspect of their business as a whole.
That is correct.
Right?
That is correct.
So
that is correct.
they are having other impacts and effects, and so perhaps affecting 45 people with this one particular thing is just a portion of everything they're actually doing and the impact they're having. So that might be okay for them. That might be enough for them to still be doing what their mission is.
through the chair, I think they would have to prioritize what part of all the total programming that they would like to do that these funds would be most applicable for.
To the,
Anita?
to the chair. To make up the 40, I'm gonna go back to either Nikki or Beverly. One of you guys. Where would you made up the 40,000 to fix the mistake of not funding the board up program? Where would you make the recommendation?
Through the chair, we didn't actually not fund them. This was an error with an application. The application dollar amount was not placed on the budget. So we corrected it by placing it on the public service budget. So then once we saw that we needed to put it there, it was there, and now it's being considered for funding, as being recommended for funding.
I think Anita's asking if that oversight wasn't made and CDA would have recommended the $40,000, where would have you taken the $40,000 away from the recommendations that you provided us? Is that what you mean, Anita? Like,
yeah, that's what I said. Where would you make it? Where would you make the cut? And what category?
No, the only category you can make
which
agency?
Oh, which agency?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. That's what we're trying to decide now, because this has been, it was on the last budget that everyone looked at. Okay.
Wait a second. The budget that your department gave us did not have the 40 grand. So, and you're saying, then that was an error, you're saying, regardless of how the error happened.
Yes.
We're saying, if you're saying it's an error and it should have been on there, you would have had to not fund something else at 40 grand. So
that's
which
correct.
one, what would have been your suggestion way back when you were putting this together?
Okay.
Like, oh, well, we're not going to fund, you know,
it probably
this
would have
entity.
been, well, I can say in hindsight now, it probably would have been the Dare to Dream project.
Then I think that we should take that recommendation from the department and take the 40 grand for YNDC's board up program right there and make that switch.
And
here I concur.
I would agree. So we all would be saying then that flying high would still have more impact on the community.
To the chair, Julius, Boss or Julius, I'm not saying that they're not, that none of them are less than the other. I'm just saying it need to be taken somewhere, and that's right. The full amount, and they should be able to make it up in their budget somewhere else.
Okay.
It's not a judgment against them, but it's where I think the money needs to go.
Yeah, we're going for impact, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so then it seems, if we're working from the CDA recommendations, so okay, the 40,000, we're gonna have to still come up with, whatever, a little bit more, so that it's going to come from the recommendation of Dare to Dream, so we could revitalize the 40,000. And then it seems as though we have to come up with $20,000 for smarts. Where should, looking at it, I think the next, it seems it would be either Heart Reach, Ministries, or Flying High, based on the recommendations that were given to us. Anita?
To the chair, smarts you're talking about giving money to Smarts, but Smarts has a way to make up that 20,000. They have access to individuals that some of these other agencies don't have. I want to be correct about it. As many, I don't know how to put it. Smarts has individual donors and things like that who are maybe more affluent and more capable of helping to fund Smarts than Flying High might. That's just what I'm looking at. So, you know, Smarts can make up to 20. I'm not sure if these other agencies can make it up.
I agree with you, but I guess in my opinion, I don't think that should be a hindrance to Smarts, and I believe that they probably have these other donors and people willing to give them money for their program because their program is successful. So people believe in their program so much that they're willing to contribute, and I feel that the funding that the city is able to offer, which is a fraction of their total budget, I still think it makes a big impact. Oh, go ahead, Lauren. Oh, go ahead, Anita, and then Lauren.
No, Lauren had her hand first.
This is going back, but one of the goals that Beverly and Nikki both brought up was that these organizations get to a point where they no longer need this funding. They've grown to a point, they've become really successful, they've been able to move on and get other
sources.
And so perhaps Smarts is an example of that, and it's a great success story from CDBG funding all the way 300, a full circle of now they're self-sustainable because they get all these other donors at this point in time. And I don't know, I'm not going to pretend to know what their financial situation looks like on the other end of things. I'm just perhaps asking, is that possible that they are a success story at this point and one of the organizations that can be looked at?
Nikki, did you have your hand up to answer that?
Did. Yeah, thank you. Through the chair. So I want to make sure that we set these agencies up for success so that we can see them be self-sustainable, because as we said before, this is gap funding. But I also want to make sure that we're careful in helping them step down and helping them understand that they're self-sustainable, and creating a space where, you know, we've worked with them so that they don't apply, or we help them understand the step down process. I agree that they are one of the stronger agencies, but I also, and I guess I'm speaking out of both sides of my neck, I also agree that we just don't want to arbitrarily strip them when they've shown documented success as well. So I want to be able to create that space where we help them step down and step out of this entitlement fund, because it's not entitlement, but we're creating an environment by which organizations think it's entitlement funding and they make this a part of their budget. And that's where we want to start educating better so that we're not here.
Through the chair.
Beverly?
Yes, and I agree with Nikki. And what else I wanted to say though, so that Smarts wouldn't feel as though we are just pushing them aside. If there was also some additional, what we would label city funding, that we could, so that they can feel as though they're still engaged with the city, you know, to a certain extent. Because I think too, if we just kick them out, they will have that feeling. So I think we should transition them some type of way, like, you know, transition them off of the funding, because we do need to consider that they are self-sustainable and so forth. and I think we do need to consider that when we're talking about funding for CDBG in particular.
Lauren had a direct follow-up.
But you guys did kick them off. You didn't fund them. So I don't understand
well, through the chair, we didn't kick them off. What we were saying is perhaps not fund them this year. There's been a lot of agencies that may have gotten funded one year. And in fact, SMARTS program, when I first started with the city, when they were at YSU, CDBG funded them for years. And then once the program left YSU, they left CDBG for a while also. So it's not actually kicking them off. It may be a year or 2 or 3 that the SMARTS program didn't apply. And then when they came back to apply, maybe they didn't get the funding that year, but then they started getting funding again. So it's more or less, they have a history with the CDBG program, but eventually I think what it is that we have to explain the process, and so they won't feel as though they're being kicked off. You know what I mean? We're just saying that maybe there's a different funding pot that you can get to keep your connection with the city, and maybe we could use the CDBG funds for another agency that might need that same help that you got when you needed help. So that's all I'm saying, some type of explanation, transition, or whatever, because we funded SMART several years and then they left us and they came back and, you know, we started funding them again. And so I think we just need to have some systems in place where there's not these misunderstandings that we either don't like you personally, don't want to fund you, your program's no good, it hasn't impacted, and all those different things that organizations may think or feel when they don't get funded for 1 year. It's not to say that they can't come back and maybe be funded next year in some circumstances. So that's some of the types of things that we have to work on, those different perceptions of this CDBG funding. I mean, that's something we just have to do, because this is not the first time I've faced these types of situations, you know, with agencies and funding, you know.
Anita, you had your hand up, and then Julius, and then I believe Nikki had her hand up as well.
Yeah, to the chair. Well, actually, Lauren was bringing up what same thing. They had no funding, so why would we increase it to 20,000? And if we want to keep that connection, we could give them something, but they were not funded from the original that was proposed from Beverly and them. So to say that we need to come up with 20,000 for them when originally they were proposed to have none. So and no one is entitled. So if they get 10,000, that is a great way of keeping the tether with the city, but we don't have to do 20,000.
Julius?
I was just going to say, to everybody's point, I think SMARTS is a great organization, and I do think that SMARTS has the ability to come up with additional funding. I do think they deserve something, so I agree with Anita's suggestion for 10,000 or so. What are we still trying to come up with? Are we still short?
We're short well, now if we go with 10,000 for SMARTS, we're short the 10,000 for SMARTS, and we're short whatever it is that we decide on Ohio Urban Renaissance. I believe that's according to what I'm trying to keep track of.
Okay, so looking at that, then I would maybe suggest, if the Ohio Urban Renaissance, their request was what, 40, to give them, I mean 20, and then what that means, we're 30,000 short, correct? Somewhere around there. And then take the 60 for flying high and give them 30, and then which should be pretty balanced. That's just a suggestion, because trying to move along to get us somewhere. Nikki?
Through the chair, thank you. Earlier, like I said, I have been working out some figures, and I do have this budgeted kind of based on where we are.
Please share, your numbers.
Dare to Dream, we said we weren't going to fund them this time, correct?
Right.
Is that correct? So then Flying High, I allocated $45,000 to Flying High. Okay. And I think that's sustainable to them. Hurt Reach Neighborhood Ministries, 15. Home for Good, 20. Inspiring Minds, 20. OCA, 15. Ohio Urban Renaissance, 10,300. Smarts, I left the allocation at 20, just, and we can discuss that. Revitalize, 40. And Youngstown Promise Neighborhoods, 15,750. Which is in balance. So, I mean, if that's a good starting point, we can negotiate with Smarts, or that's just, you know, based on some of the conversations and wanting to stay in that impact area.
Yeah, so I like that starting point. So we could use that as the new suggested column. I think, yes.
The only other suggestion I have, we did all agree that Home for Good was going to stay at the 24.8. I think we all agreed on that one. I think we said OCA, Home for Good, and let's see, Revitalize.
Yeah, I didn't have a note for Home for Good. I am okay with taking them to the 20,000 that Nikki suggested, because then that freed up money to fund some of these other organizations. And if the consensus was to, in a sense, for lack of better words, to wean Smarts off from the CBDG and give them 10,000 in lieu of 20,000, I would like to see that $10,000 be given to Ohio Urban Renaissance, which would then take Nikki's total from 10,300 to 20,300.
To the chair?
Yes.
We haven't done the 40,000 total for the Revitalize program. I think it was at 37.
We did. We did. Nikki went through the whole column. She gave us a whole balanced column.
The whole 40,000. Okay. And so how much do we have? How much is left in that category, Nikki?
Nothing. She balanced the whole entire category. Do you want her? Go ahead.
Without going to that 20,000, whatever figure you said for Oak Hill, because we have also decreased the dollar amount for the Taft Promise neighborhood, and we took them down from 18 down to 3,000, and then
to 15,000
to 15,000. So we reduced them by 3,000, and is that right, Nikki? So we have reduced them by 3,000. So if there's 10,000 left over, I would like to see Taft Promise neighborhood restored to the original amount that the CDBG funding was recommended. The original recommended a dollar amount of 18,000, and then you can go from there.
Nikki, will you, or I guess, okay, so because Nikki presented a balanced budget, so obviously the community policing remained as is, as did litter control. Dare to Dream for this year would have not been allotted anything. Flying High, 45,000. Heart Reach Ministries, 15,000. Home for Good, 20,000. Inspiring Minds, 20,000. Oak Hill Collaborative, nothing, but I believe they could still have their 14,000 for the Raspberry Pi that was previously allotted, or something of that sort. I guess we could talk about that after. OCA, 15,000. Ohio Urban Renaissance, 10,300. Okay. Smarts, 20,000. Revitalize, YNDC, 40,000. Nothing for the Lifeguard Academy, and 15,750 for the Promise neighborhood, which presented a balanced budget. Is that correct, Nikki?
Through the chair, yes. But if we put Promise neighborhood back up to, was it 18 flat? Because I changed that call.
Okay, but you
If
said
we
there's
put that
only
up to the 18 and then bring Ohio Urban Renaissance to 18,050, it still balances.
There we go.
I like that.
18,050.
And then 18 for Youngstown Promise neighborhood, and it still balances.
Okay, that's okay. Let me just double check. Oh, so I guess I would be fine with that to present to, you know, council. Question though, can we quickly clarify, and I believe, because it was talked about the last meeting, for the Raspberry Pi program from the for Oak Hill Collaborative, my understanding was that the money, they're still able to use it like it was previously allocated, and they can still use it or something like that?
Through the chair, they have to go through the same process as everyone else to qualify themselves for the funding to get an agreement. They do not have an agreement. So that funding is actually, it was allocated to them, but they do not have an agreement with the city of Youngstown for that funding.
So what would happen to, so that funding is something that later in the future could be redistributed as, for example, how you guys have come to us previously, if funding wasn't used, we can find somewhere else to put it?
That is true, once we go through the process, necessary processes.
So through the chair, potentially we could come back and still fund someone or give someone additional funding based on that 14,000. Beverly?
Oh, through the chair. Yes, if it doesn't go to Raspberry Pi, if they don't fulfill the requirements to get a fully executed agreement between their organization and the city of Youngstown, then they will not have access to those funds.
And Anita, did you have a comment? And then we'll go ahead.
Yes, well,
on to the next sections.
It was approved. They do have paperwork they need to, if they want to access it, there is something that they have to do. And until, but we're not going to be taking that money from where it's at right now, because they still have time.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really off the table right now. I mean, it's just it.
Okay, so I think, I mean, I think we're okay with that. Are we good to move on to the next category?
I would like just to, Nikki, to please read down through that budget one more time, please.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Okay. Dare to Dream, 0. Flying High, 45,000. Heart Reach Neighborhood Ministries, 15,000. Home for Good, 20,000. Inspiring Minds, 20,000. OCA, 15,000. Ohio Urban Renaissance, $18,050. Smarts, 10,000. YNDC Revitalize, 40,000. Youngstown Promise Neighborhood, 18,000.
Thank you.
Okay, and then and the city departments remain at their numbers. Okay, let's move down to housing. Nikki, do you have a similar suggestion?
No, I didn't. I'm through the chair, so I didn't look at that one yet. We hadn't really discussed the ones that were, and again, there was another one in this category, Building Neighborhoods of Youngstown, where the application, there was a mix up with the application, so it wasn't on the original budget, but it was added on, and we need to figure out how to fund it.
Quick question, are we able to, from my understanding, as long as they're balanced, we can take from public facilities and put in housing and vice versa, correct? as long as the public service cap is 15%, the other two are interchangeable, correct?
Through the chair, now, if there's funding left, but we can't, the funding that we could move would only be under where it says fire station improvements. I mean, you can move any of the funding since it isn't already being used for that category. So you can move it to housing. But my question would be then, are you, YNDC, you would still need to probably reduce their funding. So I don't quite understand what it is that you want to move from the one to the other.
I just want to make sure to have a understanding if it's permissible or not, because I know the public service you cannot move because that has a
right. I understand what you're saying. Yeah. But before we move to that one, I know you had said we could make a comment, and the only one that I would comment about before we start moving is Plaza View. That the only reason that we hadn't decided on recommending funding on that one is because we have done projects with Plaza View in the past, even as late as last year and then the last 2 years. But this one was particularly for a roof. The other improvements were on the inside of the apartments. So our thought was that because of the type of organization that maybe they could have other funding to do outside improvements to the building. So, but I just wanted to put that out there. But we don't have any problems with funding Plaza View because they're, been a very good subrecipient.
Good to share.
Yes, Julius.
To Beverly's point, that's definitely up for discussion. Me personally, I didn't see it as any different of a project as when we funded the roof projects for McGuffey Plaza, for instance. Plus, it's an organization that kind of needs the funding. But like I said, it's up for discussion.
Lauren.
I'm sorry, Nikki, did you say that we have to come up with money to fund building neighborhoods of Youngstown from your original budget that did not fund it?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct. Correct.
And how much money do we need to come up with for that, and why?
Beverly.
Through the chair. So we can take funding from the public facility category and still balance. So now our main purpose is either we're going to fund YNDC, as everyone has stated, we see here 300, 400, and then 80 for Plaza View, and then the 153, 148 for the other YNDC. So we can either lower that funding, or we would have to take the funding from the public facility category.
I'm sorry, but why do we have to fund it?
We don't have to fund it, but I'm saying that's part of our discussion for tonight. Which one are you talking about?
BNOY, like it wasn't recommended in the first round. Now you're saying we have to, so what happened there?
No, I didn't say we have to. No,
Through
we
the
don't.
chair. Through the chair.
Yes, Nikki.
Thank you. I think Councilwoman McNally is asking what happened that they weren't on it, the original budget, and now they're on it. What happened with their application that we're asking for funding now when we didn't on the original budget?
Okay, through the chair, I thought there was another budget in the middle since this one. There's been so many budgets. Sorry about that. Yeah, but this is another one that they legally applied for the funding, but they were not on this budget. But now they are supposed to be in this housing category, and that's why they're on there now, BNOY.
No, what was their request?
Yeah, you're not asking for my question.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Lauren, go ahead, ask your question.
No, I'm sorry, my question's still not being answered. Like,
What are you asking?
He was asking how much was the original request?
I don't
Okay,
even know how to rephrase it.
okay, the original request. Okay, that's an easy enough question, but I have to get that sheet in front of me.
Was this a mistake again, the way the YNDC one was up above?
It was a lost application,
A
yes.
lost application, okay.
Yes.
So it was a lost application. When you figured out that you lost the application, you guys reviewed it, decided it was a quality application and that you should allocate some funds to it. How much did you decide you wanted to allocate to it, and how much did they originally request?
I'm going to defer that to Rufus because once we found the applications, I didn't really look at the application. Our department looked at it. So Rufus, would you take over on that one, please?
Yes, the original budget was $206,165. They were asking $194.02 from CDBG.
And what's the recommendation of CDB of the department?
Beverly, I don't know how much.
No, I had not recommended any funding for them, but I see that Basha has recommended an amount for them. I had not made a recommendation on BNOY. And that was strictly up for discussion from the group, simply because now that I can't remember what date that this budget was made up, but I did not make any recommendation. I just submitted a copy of this budget to you with them on it.
Okay, so if you're not recommending any funding, and is this committee recommending any funding?
Julius.
I just kind of want to hear explanation for, just to get it on the record, what exactly their programming is for the funds.
Rufus, may I defer to you also for the actual BNOY application, this one? It was energy saving program, but I'm not certain what type of energy they were talking about saving with the CDBG dollars. Rufus, are you aware of that?
The program was to replace 20 furnaces and 20 hot water heaters. That's what their program was, to replace 20 furnaces and 20 hot water heaters.
And that's just through the chair?
Yes.
Does that at all overlap on any of the services that, let's say, YNDC was going to be providing through their emergency repair? And does it make sense to have more than one organization performing functions? I think YNDC, they absorb Interfaith, right? So Interfaith previously would be the ones replacing furnaces and things like that. So basic question is Benoit trying to make up for services that may not be able to be extended throughout the city through one organization?
Through the chair, they are a duplication of what YNDC is currently doing through its emergency repair program. There is a huge need that I think two agencies are needed, because both of those are huge needs throughout the community. I don't know if there's enough funding for two, but there is definitely a need for two.
So direct follow-up, with that being said, now currently is Beverly or Rufus, do you have any specific, or Nikki, any specific recommendation for Benoit in this category?
Nikki.
Through the chair, I guess first I want to be able to determine in this housing category, what dollar amount are we trying to get to? And if we're commingling the funds from housing and public facilities and taking from one to the other, we need to make sure that we incorporate that $40,000 for Mineral Springs that was not initially in our budget, so that we can work from there. So are we taking this total as a whole, or are we breaking it down by section?
Through the
So that
chair.
I would say whatever I guess needs to be done, because I do want to make sure that Mineral Springs is funded. So
Right.
if that's something that needs to be taken from, you know, housing, or is it something that can be pulled from public facilities? So I guess it would just depend. Lauren, go
They
ahead.
have to work across both.
Oh, I was just saying, do we want to remove the city stuff and take that off the table for reduction? Or, because my only fear is that fire station facility improvement is that because, like, I guess we don't know, is that because the floors were falling out and it needs to be done? Because there were a few fire stations that I know the chief said the floors were collapsing.
Through the chair, this facilities improvement was actually seed money for the new fire station that Chief Finley wants to build.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, so I guess same question. Do we want to take all the City of Youngstown programs off the table at this conversation right now?
I think we have to keep fire equipment.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Julius.
I don't think you can, if it's going to be necessary to pool funds in order to fund some of these other organizations, such as Mineral Springs.
Okay, so again, I suppose the park department capital improvements, you can't pull street improvements because that means we don't meet our paving rate.
Right.
Right.
So maybe it's the Parks Department capital improvement one is the only one you can pull from.
Through the chair, can I ask Nikki a question? Nikki, on this fire department, fire station improvement, is it that we need 200,000 per year for that particular?
Through the chair, this actually is a conversation that we probably can have with Kyle. What he was willing to do is budget whatever amount we can allocate. Of course, 200 will help. You know, if it's less than that, that's how much is going to go towards that. So, you know, if we need to, and if we have to reduce it, we have to reduce it. Yeah, that's
well, so Nikki, because I agree. I mean, I think we need to start putting money aside somehow, like creating a nest egg to do the new fire station. But then at that point, and I just would want to make sure that it's going to a new fire station, because the category, it actually says facility improvements, for example, fire station.
Right.
And I would not be comfortable. If it is for the fire station, then that's different. But if it could then potentially be used for whatever other reason, then I would not be as comfortable allotting that much money towards it.
Through the chair, this particular line item is exactly for the fire station, and probably should say new fire station.
Okay.
Well,
Julius and Anita. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, what is the dollar amount we need to achieve here, combining both categories?
So through the chair, what I think we should do first is, if we balance, Nikki, if you're looking at your budget sheet, I show that $20,000 off right now. So that if we balance that first, then we can see how much public facility funding is left. Because
well, I guess through the chair, I'm sorry. I guess I need the bottom line, because I've already made some changes, adding in Mineral Springs, adding in BNOY. So if we know what the bottom line is, we know where to work from.
Right, and I don't have BNOY on mine because it's 30,000 the recommended amount.
That's That's why I asked specifically now, knowing what exactly is going to be the service provided, what would be your
Right.
recommendation for them, if
Yeah.
one at all?
Because I do have Mineral Springs on my budget.
I mean, my opinion is at this point is hearing what services they offer to help balance the budget. I say not fund them at this point. Keep the emergency repair as was recommended by administration. Retain, same with the limited repair. I assume that the Healthy Homes and Lead Hazard program, is that the one where we have to have a match for the grant? Is that correct?
Yes, that 400,000 is a match that we need to allocate right now.
Okay, so that would remain. The fire equipment, which would remain that 120. I guess there's room for discussion on the Parks Department. The street improvements would need to remain at 750. And the fire station, as long as it goes to the fire station, I mean, the amount that you guys recommended is fine, unless there's some wiggle room. And I want to make sure that Mineral Springs is funded at the 40. Thereafter, I don't know what the committee or other people have in mind. I don't know who's next. Was it Anita? Anita, go ahead, and then Lauren.
Wait for a long time. I'm looking at this thing here, and the notion of us taking anything from our city facilities to put into either Mineral Springs or Cityscape, that's wrong, in my opinion. That is, I mean, those are all nice projects, but those are limited to certain areas and it doesn't impact the entire city. Whereas our city facilities, it impacts everyone, every single person. And the idea of saying you take away any money and then leaving Cityscape untouched, because that's what that is, Cityscape. And going to the full 120,000, and then again, taken away from our facilities for that impacts all of us. If you're gonna look, this is my opinion that you need to look at those things like that, as opposed to our city buildings.
I agree, and that's the recommendation.
And our fire stations.
Yeah, the recommendation, yeah, the city departments then, from the recommendation that I gave, other than the fire station, because I wasn't clear if it was for general improvements or specifically just for the fire station. The recommendation that I made was to decrease Cityscape and leave the funding for the city departments. Lauren?
Yeah, again, my opinion here is to leave everything as was presented by the original document, except for funding Mineral Springs, adding the 40 grand in there, and looking at removing portions of Cityscape and Northeast Homeowners Association to make up that funding. And if there's even any wiggle room with either of those, increase our fire station seed money with it.
Julius?
Yeah, I would somewhat agree with Lauren, except it was my previous understanding that there were no specific plans for the city facilities or fire station improvements. It was like that was literally just an example. So that's now not the case. Now the case is this is for a new fire station, and the Parks Department does have plans to do improvements, and other city facilities do have plans to do something with that money once it's allocated, correct?
Nikki?
Through the chair, the fire improvement facilities, that was always for the fire station. I don't know if it was misquoted before, but that's what the purpose of it was. We've worked with Kyle and the fire chief, and that's what those funds were allocated for, with regard to the park department, there's a complete parks improvement plan that Dawn worked off of to get this figure. So yes, there's a complete plan for the parks using these funds.
Through the chair.
Yes, Beverly.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everyone that a lot of times when I'm doing this actual budget, I still have conversations that have to take place, you know, and so that's some of the things we're hashing out now. But like, for example, fire station improvements. At the time, I didn't know that that was an exact project until I spoke with Kyle. And the same thing with the park improvements, that I got that clarification from Hunter, who had been working with Dawn at the Parks Department.
Right, through the chair. So that's just something I needed the public to know, so everybody's aware, because previously this was an example and there were no specifics.
Yes.
So if the administration does have specific plans for these monies, I can see not taken from them. When it comes to Cityscape, my understanding that their reason for getting 120,000 was because it went along with the administration's strategic plan. Is that correct?
Through the chair. Now, that was partial. My understanding that there was some work going to be done on around the Belmont Avenue area. I'm not specific where, but that even that we were going to steer Cityscape's projects, you know, because sometimes we have to do that after we allocate this funding, that we have to make certain that what type of project they're going to work on is targeted with other projects that we're doing in the city. So that's a conversation that we will have with Cityscape.
Nikki and then Anita.
Yeah, through the chair, in order to make sure YNDC gets funded, even though, you know, that might be part of the strategic plan, I think 100,000 is reasonable so that we can fund Mineral Springs. I think, you know, we need to look where we can find the other 20. And even, you know, we're saying 200,000 for the fire station, that still leaves 10,000 on the table. So there's 30,000 right there. Where can we find the other 10 in this category so that we can fully fund Mineral Springs?
I think Lauren said Northeast.
I wasn't through the chair. I wasn't done.
Anita had her hand up, and then Julius.
To the chair. In the past, we only funded the Northeast homeowners up to $25,000 and $30,000, and this is a $25,000 increase. And I don't know what more they're going to do than what they're doing right now that would merit that kind of an increase from, because when we first got on council, it was 20,000. We only got on council 4 years ago, and it's going from 20 now to proposing to go to 55,000. And I'm going to look again at Northeast homeowners, which is limited, and Cityscape, which is limited in the areas in which it's affected, as opposed to our public facilities, which affects all of us. And it's not about beautification and feel good projects. These are projects, our facilities, our fire departments and things are things that actually affects our homes. Whether or not up there in the third ward where we shut down a fire station, whether or not they'll have another fire station. So if we got to make a cut to take care of the fire station, those cuts need to come from things like Cityscape and the Northeast homeowners, and we need to get that fire station taken care of.
Anita, will you read me again? What did you say? You said at first they received 20, and now they're up to 25.
Yes. When Lauren, Basha, Jules, and Anita, when we first got on council, the CDBG funding for Northeast homeowners was $20,000. I remember this distinctly because there was an extra $5,000 left on the table, and we foolishly said, oh, well, we'll just give it to Northeast homeowners, not realizing what we were doing. And so then the next year they came back and they got 25,000. Okay, and each year it has gone up, and now it's at 55,000. Okay, but if we're gonna, and they do nice work, it's nice, but the fire station is more important. I will say that to any and everyone, that the fire station is more important than Cityscapes doing what they're going to do down there, which is decorative on the lower Belmont, and on the east side, northeast side, it's more important than the Northeast homeowners beautification projects and things. It is more important for us to make sure that we start putting away money for the fire station. And
I will agree. I mean, so I'm fine to recommending them to go to get their 25 that they receive. Julius?
So to the point that I was trying to make with my direct follow-up, I was going exactly where Anita went. So thank you, Anita, for expressing my sentiments. What I was gonna say is basically, I know that Cityscape does great work and they basically changed the face of Youngstown in a way. But I think just like Smart, Cityscape is able to make up for some of the funding that they wouldn't get here today. The question also came into play with, I was gonna ask Rufus or Beverly to kind of explain what exactly was the need that Northeast homeowners request jumped so much and why it was recommended that they get that jump. Specific, just so it's out there and on the record that if it is funded fully, there's a reason behind it. But it is true that, like my colleague said, Northeast homeowners, they do great work. They definitely change the face of the East Side. But what's the reason for the increase year after year and such a huge increase? I think we gave them like $26,000 last year. So what was the reason for the huge increase this year, just so everybody out there knows?
Okay, through the chair, I will take part of this and then I'm going to turn it over to Rufus. When Northeast homeowners first came to us for funding, they had I believe, a part-time person working in their office and so forth. And through the years, now they do have like the third person since I've been working with CDBG, that someone works this program, and they employ youth during the summer to cut grass. And also during the years that, you know, I have worked with Northeast homeowners, they have made extreme efforts to get other funding. So they're asking for more, but they have actually increased quantifiable increases in what type of services they offer on the East Side. And they have also reached out and found other funding. Now, I can't say for sure because I would have to go back and look, but a foundation also funded them. And I think maybe they got some bank funding in the past. So that was the main reason why I funded them, to keep them going, because they were the only ones on the, you know, on the East Side, and that they did their homework. They did what I asked them to do, to reach out to get other funding. And they also improved their efforts as far as their internal controls and those types of things, money, the management of the program, and plus just hiring the youth from, I think at one time they were using East High School students. So that's just my general, and I don't want to say feeling or anything, because we're not talking about feelings. These were my observations from working with this organization, that they have made every effort to do all the things that I've asked them to do over the years.
Just my opinion, and then Lauren, and I think based off of what you said, I think they need to continue getting funded for the great work that they do. And I think that allocating $25,000 would be sufficient, and whatever remainder other than funding Mineral Springs, whatever remainder to put it towards the fire station, including cutting the recommendation of Cityscape, not to give them 120,000, but take some of that as well towards our fire station. Lauren. Oh, but that's just my 2 cents, and then my colleagues can go ahead. Lauren.
Yeah, I agree with what my colleagues all have said, I think we're all in agreement of where we want money to come from and to go to at this point in this bottom category here. And I think that it's important to point out that the city does support Cityscape in other ways, shape, or form. So it wouldn't be a situation by which they felt like we just dropped them, like you guys mentioned earlier in the meeting. So there is a lot of other support that we give them and funding that we give them from other areas too. So that relationship, you know, it's an important one and it can stay an important one, even if we have to shift their dollars from CDBG right now because we have other priorities.
Thank you, Lauren. Julius and Anita.
So like everybody said, I agree. I am big on employing the youth, and I am big on the fact that we all said we wanted to be able to affect the neighborhoods more. Okay, let's not focus so much on downtown and things like that. I agree. So I don't think we should cut Northeast homeowners from what they got last year. I'm okay with giving them 30,000 and then probably taking that remainder of that 30,000 from Cityscape.
But we would still then have to come up with money to give to Mineral Springs. So it wouldn't. Well,
through the chair.
Go ahead, Anita.
Yes, through the chair. I'm going to say again, I think it should be at 20. Boss, you said 25, and you're right. It should be $25,000 to Northeast homeowners. That's my opinion. I believe that Cityscape should be down at 75,000. They do have other means of raising money. This year we may not have a holiday parade, but every year that we have a holiday parade, you have to pay to enter it, and Cityscape is the one that makes the money off of the holiday parade, and the city picks up the tab. You know, don't forget, we pay for auto security and anything else that's associated with that parade. The city picks up the tab, and Cityscape makes the money off of the entry fees. I don't know how much that is, but it's probably enough to make up the difference. So my opinion is that Northeast homeowners should be getting 25,000. I'm not going to dog you out, Julius, about Cityscape, but Cityscape is limited to downtown Youngstown. You know, and downtown Youngstown is getting plenty of our city dollars. And of Northeast homeowners, I mean, they have a council person they can ask.
I will agree with you, and I think the cuts there will give 40,000 to Mineral Spring, and I don't know offhand the math. I think it's like 15,000-ish that would be left over, and that could go towards the fire station.
I think it's 35,000.
Beautiful, even better.
My numbers that can go to the fire station, and 40,000 for Mineral Springs if we take Cityscape to 75,000, which I think is still a really reasonable number and not that far off of what their ask was, and Northeast to their normal budget of 25,000.
I'm fine with that. Beverly, are you trying to clarify?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, does anybody have the budget in front of them where you can see if it's balanced now? Because I'm showing that we had additional dollars. So I just want to see if someone.
So it appears as though housing, did we conclude that it's just going to stay as recommended?
Yeah, yes. I think so. So nothing would change in that section. So it's balanced at the housing. 853,508, the original.
Okay. And then Cityscape is 75,000. The fire equipment is 120,000. The parks improvements are 300,000. The street improvements are 750,000. I'm going to go back to the fire station improvements because we're going to use the difference. Northeast homeowners, 25,000.
You take Northeast to 27,000. I'm at an auction. I'm at an auction now. It's 27,000.
Good deal.
Okay, Northeast homeowners, 27,000.
Thank Lauren. Can I get it? 27?
Yeah, you can have the 27. We can,
27.
if they're expanding their program, and then, you know, we can support the expansion of the program, you know, up to a certain point, and then we attempt to roll them off, right? That's the goal. They get to a point where they can
Yes.
fly.
Thank you.
And then 40,000 for Mineral Springs. So now I'm gonna try to come up with what the difference is. 2,300 plus 50.
It should be 3586.
Okay.
That would drop into, would be in addition to the fire department one.
Okay. I'm sorry, because I'm gonna write that down. How much, Lauren?
So the fire department total.
Yeah, the fire station equipment, the fire station improvement one.
Would be 240,815.
240.
815, and then we should have a balanced budget.
Okay, hold on.
Oh, wait. I'm going to be off by your $2,000, Julius.
Too late.
Sorry.
It's too late.
I know. 238,815.
238,815. Okay. Beverly, so did you get that? So to the fire station improvements, it would be 238,815.
You're on mute, Beverly.
Can you go down through that whole category for me?
Yes. Cityscape 75. Fire equipment 120. Parks Department 300. Street improvements 750,000. Fire station improvements 238,815. North Homeowners Association 27,000, and Mineral Springs 40,000.
Okay. So I'm off somewhere because I'm showing we have additional funding. Let's see. That needs to be cut.
What? How?
They're allocated.
No,
yeah, I'm over budget, and I'm trying to see where.
I think. Do you have? I think in housing. In housing, all we're funding is YDC emergency repair of the 153,508, 300,000 to limited repair, and the lead hazard 400,000. We're not funding. We're not funding Benoit.
Okay, what about the 80,000 for Plaza View?
I think I mean, as much as we want to fund that, I thought that the committee said we're going to hold off on that, but
okay, that's fine.
I misunderstood? Wait, I just want to make sure. No,
we're not giving them nothing. No, I thought we were funding them something.
We can't fund them
factor
something.
them into my numbers.
So if we fund them something, then that's fine. I'm fine with that. How much do we want to fund them? So then we could figure out that's how much we're going to subtract from others.
Well,
but if we fund them, if it's for a roof and we fund them something, are they not, if it's not enough, they're not gonna be able to put the roof on?
Well, it's units, so I'm sure they will be able to put roofs on one of the units out of how many units they were gonna do. So just like McGuffey Plaza, we gave them like 50,000 every year until they completed their project. So we can do the same here, or we can, you know what I mean? So I think that's why I say, you know, if we can give them something, it's definitely better than nothing when it comes to a roof, definitely.
Yeah, that's fine. So
gotcha.
how much do you is sufficient to start, like, to do a unit? Because I have no idea. I mean, if we give them 20,000, is that going to at least do one of the units or no?
I was thinking at least 50.
I mean, how much, Anita?
I was thinking 40,000, half.
Okay.
The suggestion, and they can come back next year and apply for more and continue.
Okay, I mean,
I still want to put as much as possible to the fire department, towards the fire station.
So if we do give 40,000 to Plaza View, we have to cut 40,000 somewhere. And where would you guys like to cut it? I don't even want to say it.
Yeah, keep in mind, people live in Plaza View.
So Cityscape, is Cityscape not a beautification project?
We already cut them to 75, right?
But I think we just stay, but I think.
I don't see where else we can cut if we don't cut from Cityscape.
What did we give Cityscape last year?
I don't recall. Let me see if I can have something right here.
Can I know we give them money from our federal plaza fund as well. And I know we're not having events this year, but is that a resource that they could maybe go to make up some funding?
Seems like they could, but I'm not sure in this situation.
Last year, 35,000. So that's a big jump for them, this 80.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, well, in that case, I mean, I think we could even give even more to Plaza View. We could probably now give them the 50 that you suggested.
We can do it to the fire station.
So there's nobody on the line really that can answer the question, unless Nikki can answer it, whether they would be able to benefit from the federal plaza budget.
I don't.
To the chair.
Anita.
To the chair, then, since they were able to function quite well with 35,000, then probably having them down to, we're giving even at 40,000 or 45,000, it's an increase, and it's in, you know, and of course it is downtown and in the first ward shot, but
actually I think it's going to third ward. I think she said that that's why and then I want Beverly to clarify what it's going to, because I believe it's going to Belmont Avenue, like up Belmont.
That's what I believe. That's what I.
Yeah, so it's being done in conjunction with some kind of other plans and beautification that are planned for Belmont.
Well, thing is, if they only needed 35,000 last year, we don't need to double and quadruple. You know, they can come back next year for additional funding, because it's not like this project is all going to be done this year anyhow. Or do you know more about it?
I just know it's a beautification project that's dealing something with Belmont. But I know that this Cityscape funding this year, it was supposed to play somehow into the city's strategic long-term plan somehow.
Nikki, can you speak up on the project, what the project is specifically?
Is that the Upper Belmont project coming from Liberty? Is that the one, Julius, the Upper Belmont project?
I'm not sure.
Nikki, do you have any information?
Through the chair, whatever was submitted for the CDBG grant is what we should be considering for the project and these fundings. Now, with regards to the build project, Councilwoman Davis is correct that it's not going to be all completed this year. It's in different, you know, phases. So even if we decided to reduce their funding, you know, this is going to be a multi-year project. So while everything's torn up and, you know, there's nothing going to be done immediately anyway. But I would refer back to the original request to determine, you know, the amount and the need. As far as the strategic planning on Belmont and Cityscape being a part of that, I don't have that information.
Well, through the chair, I would have to ask, why was it suggesting that it be fully funded?
Through the chair.
What does the application say? What was the application for specifically? Go ahead.
The only reason that I just made it was a suggestion, because I had conversations with Sharon Letson and she talked about what she wanted to do. And I really never spoken to her at application time. You know, I've usually spoken with her after the application, after the funding and so forth, but she has always, this is not the first year that she is stressed or expressed the desire to have more funding. So I just thought I would request it based on what she asked for and based on just her asking if she could at least be considered for more funding. Her funding in every year is typically around 35, and she always says, well, there's more that she could do with the funding. And so that's the only reason I made the suggestion, and also asked her and expressed to her that if we did do additional funding, that she would have to let us determine as a city where she was going to do that work, instead of her saying, well, I'm only going to do some planning downtown, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, that I needed her to work within the city's current plans to what it was she wanted to do with the funding. So this is nothing that is etched in stone. It's just something we discussed.
So just,
Anita, then Julius and Lauren.
The chair, okay.
Did
say Anita?
Follow up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Julius, follow up.
You can't keep letting Anita push me around. Like, so just direct follow up. So either with them, and Kyle's not on the line, so I guess the question would have to go to Nikki. Would the fire station or cityscape either be able to benefit from the money we saving at all from Federal Plaza?
Sorry, I was trying to get off mute through the chair. With whatever savings we have, I think what we would want to do with the fire station is make sure that whatever amount we're allocating is guaranteed for that and wouldn't fluctuate. If we're talking about using savings to allocate somewhere else, I think the smarter thing to do would be to allocate it to Cityscape, because again, like Councilwoman Davis said, this project is not going to be all completed in 1 year. And, you know, if they're requesting this amount, you know, for this year, and the project is, what else can we use it for in the meantime? Let's just use the savings that we have to benefit that, because I've not seen a strategic plan that included $120,000 for that project.
Thank you.
Anita and then Lauren.
The chair, so that being the case, I'm Julius, I'm in concurrence that we could increase Plaza View's funding immediately to $50,000 and still take care of in Cityscape as well, giving them a little increase since they didn't specify how much more they wanted. So I'll defer to anyone else, but that's my take. If we can take care of Plaza View, take care of Cityscape, but not to the tune of that $100,000. Oh, hi, Rufus.
Rufus, did you have a direct follow-up to that? And Lauren had her hand up.
Yes, I do. I have the budget here in front of me.
Thank you.
The budget included $66,500 for salaries, $6,200 was for utilities, rent, telephone, that type of thing. But the main expenditure that they were looking to fund, $47,880 was for a hot water pressure washer, a rotary surface cleaner, a billy goat, backpack blowers, plant supplies, and trash bins.
Basically the equipment they've been requesting for the last 5 years.
So all of that was $120,580. $47,880 for equipment, $8,200 for utilities, basically, and then 66,500 for salaries.
Okay, thank you for the information. Lauren had a question, and then I was going to comment on those figures. Go ahead, Lauren.
Why would they come to us this year and never before to fund their salaries and building stuff? I understand. I can get the equipment stuff. They use that all over the city and do their projects, etc. But they never asked before for salaries. If they did, it wasn't to this extent, I guess. Or is that normally what? Or $25,000 doesn't even come close to that 60 grand that you just said in the budget that they want for salaries. So I'm confused.
Yeah, that was gonna be my comment. Go ahead, Rufus.
They've always funded two salaries: the executive director and the program director. Those partially fund both of those salaries every year that I've been involved. 8,000 was for Sharon's salary, 5,000 was for the assistant salary. These other salaries were just included the administrative staff, seasonal landscaping maintenance team, and sidewalk squad staff. That's what the additional came from to make it 66.
So Rufus, so typically from the 25 that we give them, half of it was going towards salaries.
That is correct.
Now we just added additional salaries.
That is correct. It was for salaries and mostly plants and flowers and stuff like that. A lot of these are additional asks this year that they hadn't been funded for before.
Yeah.
But as Councilman Oliver said, they have been seeking to get money for the sidewalk squad and the billy goats and all of that stuff over the last 2 or 3 years.
Can I ask a question? Because I think they do great work, and with the equipment that is used, whether it's downtown or surrounding areas, I think that's fantastic. But say we end up funding them, they're asking around 48,000 for the equipment, the others for salaries. Do we have any kind of, can we control where it goes to? Can they say, well, no, the 48,000, we're not going to buy equipment. Instead, we're going to just fund all the salaries? Can they do that or no?
Through the chair. That's why I had stated that in my conversation with Sharon Letson, that whatever funding, we're not necessarily going to go by the budget she submitted. We have to make she's going to have to be willing to make some choices, because we haven't even agreed to buy a billy goat and all these different things, equipment, because a lot of that equipment is not eligible to be purchased with CDBG funds. So I don't know if it's because she's not aware. She's asked before. That was in her ask last year, I believe. Was it not, Rufus?
Last 2 years.
Yes. And we, but we explained. So she asked to have a conversation with me. So I just let her know whatever funding this year, we were going to start having her go in a direction that the city was going into. And so I believe she's been working with the park department and so forth. So that's just something that I stressed, that the work would need to be in an area that we are targeted for other projects that we're trying to accomplish as a city.
So I guess for clarification, if there's certain equipment that cannot be purchased, is there anything that we have, any preventative measures in line or something that would kind of ensure that the funding that's allocated doesn't simply go towards salaries? Or no, there's nothing that we can?
We follow CDBG guidelines, as far as the equipment. Now, there are certain exceptions we could make, but that has to be agreed upon as a city. And as far as salaries, typically, It has to be the person who is necessary to run the program. And we also look at percentages that we don't expect all the funding, especially for a public facility project, to go to salaries, simply because a public facility is different than a public service. You know, public service, you do need more staff, you know, salaries to run the program. So, you know, there's different elements that she would have to agree upon.
Okay, Julius, Anita, Lauren.
So thank you through the chair. Thank you for not choosing Anita this time.
Oh,
so,
you went first the last time.
So I think we can fund the cityscape to a certain point, but with the savings we're getting in Federal Plaza, because I think, to my understanding, a lot of this equipment is going to be used to clean and maintain Federal Plaza. So is it possible for us to purchase some of this equipment from the Federal Plaza budget and then cityscape use the equipment, kind of like what we used to do with YNDC when, you know, we owned all the lawn equipment, but they used it to clean up the neighborhoods and everything. Just a suggestion, throwing that out there. But I do think cityscape should receive, you know, a good portion of their funding.
Anita.
Sure. Let me ask first off, what's a billy goat?
It's like a vacuum.
For cleaning?
Yeah, it's like a
sidewalk
giant,
things?
yeah.
That we could use in the wards here when the city does that job of, you know, cutting the fields and things like that, and they leave it strewn across the sidewalks of where our residents have to work. And your suggestion, and it's not a, no, and the suggestion is that we help to provide the funds for downtown Youngstown, but not up inside our wards.
I'm not saying just for downtown. If the city owned it, the city owned it.
If it's the city, okay, that's my question. That's why I asked what was a billy goat, because that's what I thought it was. So, but I just don't like the idea. And Beverly, I think you kind of answered my thing of us funding their salaries to such a degree and all those extra bodies, those extra people. I don't see why we would suddenly let them go up there and employ more people than we pick up the tab for them. But you said that they can't do that, correct, Beverly?
That is correct.
Okay, so I still think that if we fund them at, you know, $40,000, $40,000, that's more than sufficient. That's just my opinion.
And Anita, and I was thinking, based on your comment and what you said about the billy goat and how we would all benefit, then I mean, that's something that we could look into buying and even putting it on the Ruby truck for when our neighborhoods use, do you know what I mean? With all the equipment already on there. Lauren?
But Beverly said we couldn't buy that anyhow, correct, Beverly?
Pardon?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
We would not be able to purchase a billy goat through CDBG funds.
Not with CDBG funds, no, you're correct.
The Federal Plaza dollars that we're saving.
But the federal funds, yes.
Lauren?
So I was thinking that too, Basha, that we could use the funds to buy the equipment ourselves and keep it on the Ruby truck or in that, and then they could use it because that goes out into the community whenever they needed it. But if we can't buy it, we can't buy it. So then that begs the question of the $48,000 worth of equipment that they're requesting, how much is allotted and how much isn't? Because we can automatically reduce the amount that isn't allotted.
Oh, like what's eligible for the funding?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I meant, eligible.
Yeah.
So how much of that $48,000 in equipment request is not eligible?
We're not purchasing any equipment.
So the whole thing. Okay, so
no equipment.
So the $120,000 recommendation does not include that any of that $48,000 worth of equipment?
No.
So the $120,000 then is only going towards salaries and plans?
What I was going to do is redirect her budget if she chose to do that. So she could be funded what she requested, but then before she gets an agreement, she would have to agree to redirect that budget and her scope of services. That's something we do on a regular basis for applicants. Now, let's say, for example, you apply for 40 and you only get 10. So before you get an agreement, you have to redirect your budget and rewrite your scope in order to be in sync with that new amount that you were actually allocated.
So have you determined how you're going to redirect her?
No, we haven't had that conversation. That's if she's actually approved for that amount and allocated that amount. So that was just a conversation that we had, that if she is approved for that amount through council, then she would have to arrange to change her budget and her scope of services before we would get an agreement approved. So there's no way that she could actually say she's going to do it and not do it, because she has to submit the papers and sign the agreement committing to that before it would go through the Board of Control to get approved. That's just one of the normal types of ways that we, if an organization applies for 200,000 and they get 20, we've got to make changes before they get an agreement.
Boy, but I can see where you
say no on
reduce.
this one. I think
the
best thing.
I guess it makes it hard to determine how much to reduce it by. It's very matter of fact in, say, the Plaza View. We know if we reduce it, they're just going to do less roofs.
Right.
But in this situation, it's hard to know what to reduce it by because we don't know what that's going to directly affect.
And that's why I say then that could be a no. That's why I'm saying I had the conversation with her. I put down the recommendation, and then we're having this conversation. And if you don't agree with it and believe it's going to be too much of an issue, then you say no or reduce it to a certain amount, whatever it is you choose to do. I'm giving you some facts to base your decision on. These are facts that I got directly from a conversation, directly from the application, and directly from the budget. You know, so I'm just giving you some facts and how we handle those particular types of situations if need be, you know, because Sharon is talking to more people than just me about this.
I guess my opinion in the situation would be that we fund them the way we normally do this year, and then you work with them throughout the year to create a sustainable plan or an acceptable plan at this increased funding for next year, rather than work backwards from something that's so abstract. I mean, if it was more, you know, if you could count things with it or more tangible, then
yeah, she would have to agree to that in the beginning. But see, the way some of this funding goes, that some of the subrecipients, depending on what they do and who their circle of contacts are. I'm not in the actual circle of contacts when Sharon Letson is talking about what she's going to do for the city. Now, I might get more involved now, but up until now, that's not something that I've been involved in, just getting the application. So now I will speak with her more as far as, you know, how's what you're going to do going to fit in to this particular whatever we're doing on Belmont or whatever, or with the park department.
Beverly, a quick question. Rufus mentioned that this is the third year in a row that the organization applied for this equipment. Is she aware that it's not eligible?
Yes, she's aware.
And she keeps, okay.
Yeah, that's not anything new either, that's what people do.
Okay, so I mean, Julius got a comment. I mean, I think, what do they typically get? What did you say? Do they typically get a year? Does anybody, I don't recall.
Approximately 35,000.
I mean, I think they do good work. I think we could increase it a little bit and give them the opportunity to, continue the work, and then take the remainder of that money and be able to give Plaza View $50,000. But Julius, go ahead. You had a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you through chair. Cityscape has always been good stewards with the city. You've always done great work. I mean, I would agree. They can get an increase. I think just, Beverly, your team has to work specifically with them as well as other organizations from here on out to know exactly what gives the city the biggest bang for these CDBG dollars moving forward. So
Through the chair, okay. Can I make a comment about that? Yes, and we do, but that is why we had them involved in this planning process, this consolidated plan and the annual action plan. What I think happens between the time that we do a consolidated plan and an annual action plan, everybody just goes back to what it is that they want to fund, and it fits somewhere into our plan, but never exactly. So I don't think everything is going to be necessarily a problem with our public services. So we can maybe focus on an organization like Cityscape, since they do work, I think they work closely with Park Department and other entities. And I'm just going to get myself involved more into the front end, because typically I don't see things until it's already written on paper. But to get involved in the front end, I think is going to help.
Jules, did you have a follow-up?
No, I think it is at this point more important that we put roofs on Plaza View.
Yeah, because I was looking at the math, and if we give them the original 40 that was suggested, that would take Cityscape from 75 down to their 35 that they typically receive, which I'm fine with. And then next year we could work with them for next year to come up with a plan. Lauren.
Yeah, this is a general comment, but it's kind of sad to hear that they keep applying for money that they know they can't, that's not eligible year after year, when there's such a great, asset for the city and they can do such great work, that I feel like if we could get ahead of it with them, we could really put together some impactful plans that they can execute with this money, that instead of just wasting their applications with stuff that they know we can't fund, like the equipment, like it's hard for me to believe that they keep requesting equipment year after year that they know we can't fund this way. Why haven't we should be solving for that problem with them some other way, like we mentioned a couple different options here tonight, and then helping them to write a good application that solves for our problems and their problems. And because they do partner with so many, they partner with our Parks Department, they partner with our Street Department, they partner with so many different entities. They're part of our build grant. They were part of our Wick Avenue project. That's just a general comment, just a statement there.
And I understand your comment, Lauren, but like I said, I can't control their application, and there's only so much help that we're allowed to give to an applicant when they're actually doing that application, because brings about a fairness issue too.
Sure, I understand that. Yeah, and hopefully, with you're in this new role now. Hopefully, like you said, you can be part of conversations earlier than you ever were before, and things might be different next year. But
so is the committee, based off of the numbers that we went through, is the committee then okay with decreasing the suggested 75,000 for Cityscape down to 35 that they traditionally receive, and put the 40 up to Plaza View?
That's fine if you guys are good with it.
I mean, we could give Plaza View more, but then that means we would have to cut Cityscape even more. And I don't think we want to do that. I think we want to at least keep them at what they get and allow them to work on their application for next year.
Agreed.
I agree with that. I want to keep them with something there that's
okay.
To the chair, I have a question.
Yes.
Yes, Beverly, does Plaza View request funds every year?
through the chair, Plaza View has requested funding for at least the last 3 years that I can remember. They skipped a year and then maybe they had applied, but they don't apply every year, but lately they have.
Okay, so if they, next year, if they come back, we may not be able to help them out quite as much.
We just said we gonna, help them out with the roof.
A little at a time, incrementally. Yeah, in increments.
Like
You get the amount that they asked for now. You got more than your 50.
You know what? You stay over there in the 6th ward.
You know what?
So,
Stay down there in that 1st ward for.
So Beverly, are we good with that? Do you have all of the numbers? I'm gonna go through them again, or no, we're good?
You can send them to me because I'm showing we still need to cut 34,929, and so.
Will you read me what you have so that way I can see where the discrepancy?
Sure. I'm going to start all the way at the public services.
Okay.
200,000 community police, 75,000 litter, 45 flying high, 15 heart reach, 20 home for good, 20 inspiring minds, 15 OCA, 18050 Ohio Urban Renaissance, 10,000 smarts, 40,000 revitalized, 18,000 Youngstown Promise neighborhoods. Is that correct so far?
Well, 18,750, I thought. Or no? Or was it even 18,000?
No, my numbers were just 18,000.
Okay, so 18,000. Okay, that's fine. Okay, and then
YNDC emergency repair, we're in the housing 153,508. BNOY, you had it at 0.
Correct.
50,000 Plaza View.
I think it was 40,000 because there wasn't going to be enough. 40,000.
Okay. Okay. I think that, okay. 300 for limited repair, 400 for healthy homes, 35 cityscape, 120 fire equipment, 300,000 park capital improvements, 750 street improvements, 238 815 fire station improvement, 27 for Northeast homeowners, and 40 for Mineral Springs.
Yes, and that puts us over?
Well, I must need to I have to do it on a different spreadsheet. I think there's just something wrong on this spreadsheet. I'm using this spreadsheet. I'm not using my original one.
Okay.
Yeah, so if those numbers add up, that's fine. Then I'll just, okay.
Okay, so that's it.
And we're good that I could write this up. And what I have to do, and I'm telling you what I'm getting ready to do now, is in order for this information to be integrated into the annual action plan and the consolidated plan that is already posted on the website for public review for the 30 days, I will put the number of estimated, it's going to be an estimated number of beneficiaries and the different agencies that we're going to fund. Okay, I will get that information to our consultant. They will write it up and then it's going to be reposted on the website. That's until August 1st. And then in the meantime, though, I would think you would need full approval from your other members so that when it comes to August 4th, that this document can be actually adopted by council so that we could get it submitted to HUD in order to receive our 2020 funds.
Yeah.
This 3 million.
Just to, as point of clarification, this committee meeting is kind of the platform for my colleagues to state any concerns and grievances, and then they have the right to vote for or against a piece of legislation, and they would just do that at the council meeting. But I would be hopeful that a majority of council would be comfortable with you know what I mean, with passing the budget. So and is Jennifer on the line? Jen, we have to give a formal motion for Beverly to write this up for the law department to write it up officially so it could go before council?
Yeah, I mean, you would want to do a motion to, as the CPED committee, to recommend it go forward with drafting from the law department and based upon the recommendations discussed today, the budget.
Okay. So may I have a motion from the committee, please?
I just wanted, before we make the motion, I just want to make sure that we added up everything and it equals out to a balance.
That's what I'm going to do. And so when would I be able to get that to Jennifer tomorrow morning or this evening later? Because I need to put it on my original spreadsheet.
Basha, what's your total? The numbers you read off, add them up real quick and tell us what the total is, and then Beverly, you can just see what.
Okay, I think there's just some kind of error on this budget sheet. I'm coming up.
Yeah, go ahead, Beverly.
I'm coming up $34,929 over budget.
Basha, what do your numbers add up to?
Hold on, I would have to add them.
Just add them real quick while we're on the phone, while we're on this meeting.
I would have to do it on my phone calculator. So if anybody would like to do it right along with me, that would be fantastic.
If you would read it off, I'll go along with you.
Read it off, I can do it too.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So you need you're looking for the full total, Beverly, right? So you're adding up all of them?
Yes, I'm adding up everything and I'm going to add mine again.
Oh, in action, I could do it by subcategory so we don't lose numbers.
Yes,
I know
and that's what I did. I did it by
public services. Everybody ready? Get out your calculators.
Go ahead.
200,000 plus 75,000 plus 45,000 plus 15,000 plus 20,000 plus 20,000 plus 15,000 plus 18,050 plus 10,000 plus 40,000 plus 18,000.
476050.
Perfect. That's balanced. Very good. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I have.
Okay. Now the next ones, we have 153,508. 153,508 plus 40,000 plus 300,000 plus 400,000 plus 35,000 plus.
Okay, you're going into, can you stop at that, at the housing into subtotal?
Oh, I can't. I was just going to do it all together to get to the 2409,394.
Okay.
What was the last number I gave you guys? I'm sorry.
Oh, I deleted mine. Start over.
Okay, so but I guess I could do it. Yeah, we'll just do it in two categories. That's fine. Okay, 153,508.
153,508.
40,000. 300,000. 400,000. And let's do the subtotal on that. What's the subtotal?
I've got 893,508.
Yes.
Okay. And now we're going to do the other category and then we'll add those two. Okay. So now the next one, 35,000, 120,000, 300,000, 750,000, 27,000, 40,000, and then 238,815.
1,510,815.
Okay, now take that amount and can you add to that 893,508?
2,404,323.
You said 404,000? It should be 409,000. So that means we have $4,000 to put somewhere else. I say if that is the case, if it truly is $4,000 that we still have to spend, I just say put in the fire station.
I agree.
Julius?
I'm fine with it.
What figure did you get for the two categories?
So the two categories combined together, I got 2,404,328. And the budget we need to hit is 2,800,000. Is that what you said, Basha?
And it should be right in that it should be 2,409,394. So we're off by like $4,000 and like $4,050 some dollars.
But Lauren, you got your 328 is your last combined number.
Yeah, what did you get?
323.
That's what I got too. I got 323, not 328.
Yeah, no, 323.
Okay.
We're the same.
You said 8. Okay.
Oh, sorry. We're the same. So yeah. So Basha, yes, we have exactly what you said left over. And if we want to allocate it to the
fire station
at that point, that sounds reasonable.
Beverly, is that right?
You guys go ahead and give me your totals, because I think the only thing we need to do is add money to the fire station.
Wash, you want to go ahead?
To give what the subtotals what we had?
Yeah, let's see here.
Hold on, because I'm gonna let since everybody has the same for the public service, let me quickly do the housing one. 1 second. I'll just do it as well.
Why don't you read it off?
Okay. Okay, so starting with emergency repair. So 153,508 plus 40,000 plus 300,000 plus 400,000 equals 893,508. That's what you guys gave me. So that's fine. Okay, so then the next one is 35,000 plus 120,000 plus 300,000 plus 750,000 plus 27,000 plus 40,000 plus 238,815. And I received 1,510,815.
Bosch, do you see back in the housing where I believe the original was before you put in BNOY? See where you budgeted it out to be 963,508, and I think that's what it was when I first gave it. Now I can't I don't recall.
At first, when you first gave it, it was 853,508, and we increased it to 893,508 because we added 40,000 for Plaza View.
Okay.
So that's the difference there. I think that I added it up, and I am getting what Anita and Lauren got. So I think what the discrepancy is, and I'll tell you what the fire station improvement would need to be changed to make it balance to the original, what you guys gave. Hold on 1 second. Lauren, what, the total number, what did you say you got? 2 million what? I'm sorry.
Mm,
The total was
2,404,323.
okay. So 1 second. So 238,815. 238,815 plus 5071. Okay, the total for the fire station in order for it to balance would need to be 243,886. It would get an increase. 243,886. And then that way, if we add the two categories together, it would give us the 2409394. It would put us at what the CDA department gave us that balances the budget.
Okay, because I'm showing now there's that 40,000. So just send me what you have, because my sheet, I'm going to transfer all this information into my original budget sheet.
Okay.
So
that's just easier for me.
So through the chair,
Yes.
Jennifer, then can I still make the recommendation?
Well, you can recommend that they draft the legislation for council with the recommendations made today. You verbally made those recommendations. I think she just needs to do the adjustment on her spreadsheet, correct, Beverly?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so
I want to actually see what, what was written down.
Okay.
And we all have our notes on, I have the same numbers that you all discussed. So if they all add up, then we're good, I guess. And if they're not, you'll have to meet again and move money.
Well, can we say if they're off by, the few thousand potentially, that it just be removed or added to the fire station, or no?
Oh, okay. Then yeah, just make that clear that if there's any discrepancy, that the remainder of any funds to balance it would go there.
Okay, that's good enough for me.
But do you want me to hold on? I can put the running total in a spreadsheet.
To the chair.
Yes.
Okay. I like that previous suggestion, which was to make the adjustment within the fire departments up or down as needed.
Do you want me to include that in the recommendation?
Yes, Julius.
I would do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you ready? I'd like to make a recommendation that the budget, CDBG budget recommended by the CPED committee be drafted by the law department with the language stating that if there's a discrepancy, the money be moved either up or down into the fire department and forwarded to council for consideration of passage.
Yeah.
So now you are talking about the CDBG. Did you look at the home budget?
So do I adopt the whole? I thought it was all CDBG.
No, there's a home budget also that no one ever talks about, but it's on that. It should have been on that original budget sheet.
It's on the second tab, like on the Excel sheet that you sent. It's on the second tab.
Yeah, it's on that tab.
So
do you want to do like a 60-second overview of what it is, just for clarification for the public so they understand what it is?
Yes, now the home budget, now it's a different pot of funding, and the agencies that apply for this funding it's also housing funding, and we have to set aside 15% to a CHOTO. and that's the acquisition rehab type of activity. Okay, and then we also do housing all the way. When we do the housing, they sell the houses. So there's home ownership involved with the home program also. And there's home repair. But the repair, the difference with the CDBG and the home dollars, if you do repairs on a house with home dollars, you have to bring that house all the way up to code. So those funds are used a little bit differently and different guidelines. And typically, the home program dollars are not from year to year. So it might take YNDC or BNOY more than 1 year to completely draw down all of that funding.
Thank you, Beryl.
Okay.
So we ready for the recommendation?
Yes.
See if I can do this.
Julius, I think you stated it incorrectly. You were saying with, corrected language, the legislation itself is going to say adopting the FY 2020 CDBG home budget as, with the recommendations made by the CPED committee, and any discrepancy in dollars will go to the fire, I think it was fire equipment or whatever, because you don't want that in the language of the legislation per se in the ordinance. It's just she's going to make the budget balance based on your recommendations today.
I think Lauren wants to make the recommendation this time.
Damn it. All right, I'll give it a go here, a trial. I make the motion to recommend the law department draft legislation around the CDBG and home budgets for this year that include the amounts discussed tonight. And if there's a discrepancy in our numbers that we came to tonight, we'd like to instruct the CPED department to adjust monies in the fire department either up or down as necessary. In the fire department utility, or crap, what was that line? Fire station, either up or down.
Second.
Am I done yet?
I think you're done.
And then present it to council for consideration and passage.
Second.
Before I take a motion to adjourn, I just want to make a quick comment. I just made a brand new spreadsheet with all of the numbers and it is in balance. So that provision may not be necessary. I just did the whole thing. Okay, very good, ladies and gentlemen. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Before we adjourn, I just have a question, for instance, Jen, you're right here. That the downtown, what's it called? Our downtown thing that we have for
Federal Plaza.
Federal Plaza thing. Which committee would that come under, that we can have a meeting so we can decide what to do with those funds?
We can do it under Buildings and Grounds. There is no Federal Plaza.
You can do it under finance too.
Yeah. Let's do that finance. Can we do that finance? Deal with that?
Okay, yeah, we could start a conversation on setting that up.
Okay.
Anita,
great.
do you mind sending me an email to remind me to do that tomorrow?
Yep, we'll do. Okay.
Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Bye, Julius.
We are adjourned at 7:40.
Good night.
Good night.